You're all very welcome to the Sorry about that, members. Just a wee technical issue. I think it's resolved there now, is it? Okay, member. Thank you. So again, you're all very welcome to the July Planning Committee. First item on the agenda is apologies. I have an apology for Councillor Glenn Campbell. Any further apologies? Councillor Robinson? Or sorry, Stephen McCann, Councillor McCann. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you, Councillor McGuire. Councillor Russian Devine Gallagher.
Thank you, Stephen. And Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McMahon, we might go on later online.
Thanks for that, Paul. Okay, item 2 to sign the minutes. I've just done that. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, members? None at this time. Thank you, members. Moving on then to item 4, to consider 2 files for decision. Application number 1. I think that's over to Adele. Thank you, Adele.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. Members, application number 1, LA 10 2024-0193F. The application is for construction of a single-storey community hub building and associated infrastructure. The applicant is from Annanoma District Council. It's at 48 High Street, Ahagea, Newton Butler, and the recommendation of officers is to approve permission. So, members, the site is identified here in red, and the lands in control of the applicant outlined in blue. I have some aerials here. So this is the former police service site. So you can see there the red line identifies the site. A few images here showing the current site layout. So some old security fencing and boundary walls, the access to the site. That's another image there, members, of the front of the site. So we have now the site layout plan as submitted by the applicant and agent. And I have a wee zoomed in version here. So you can see the proposed building towards the rear of the site using existing access coming in with parking. And then there's a bin store towards the rear here. So we have some visuals of the proposed building. So the front and side elevations on the rear elevation. This is a 3D view of how the proposed building will look. Another wee view there. This is the floor plan. So we're going to have 2 units, a studio and a proposed gym with some ancillary toilets and storage space. This proposal can't connect to the main sewers within Newton Butler, so a cesspool is proposed, and the red dash lines there will show the indication of the drainage for the site. And we have an interior view of what the proposed gym would look like in this new building, and a view of the proposed office/incubator units. So, members, for the reasons listed within the report and in line with the wording of the transitional arrangements in the 2015 LDP regulations, when reading both the DDP and the plan strategy together, the proposal does accord with the LDP for the reasons stated, and is recommended that the application is approved for the reasons listed in the report.
Thanks for that, Adele. Now we have speaking rights, Colleen McGee. You come forward there, Colleen.
Hello.
You're very welcome, Colleen. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just a member of the project team on behalf of the council here. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Colleen. Well, members, you've seen the recommendation, and Colleen's here to answer any questions. Have we any questions, members? Everybody seems content, Colleen? Okay, you can withdraw there, Colleen. So the recommendation is to approve the planning permission, members? Councillor O'Reilly?
Chair, if members are content, I'm happy to propose that we would go with the recommendation to approve planning permission.
Thank you, Tom. And Councillor Robinson?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Paul. Recommendation is proposed and seconded. All agreed, members? Great, thank you. Application number 2 then, moving on, and again it's back to you, Adele, please.
Now, members, application number 2, LA 10 2024-0129F, is the provision of a new build classroom accommodation for Omagh County Primary School with adequate facilities for pupils in the LS and ASD classes. So the applicant is A. Agnew and the location is Omagh County Primary School, 37 Campsie Road, Omagh. The recommendation of officers is to approve. So members, again, we have the site location plan, the site identified in red, just to the south of the existing school building and the playing fields to the south. An aerial image here, you can see the school buildings, car parking and tennis courts to the north and playing fields to the south, and the site is in the area identified red. So we have the site layout, so proposed building, T-shape there located in the southeast corner of the site. Proposed floor plan there of the classrooms and ancillary spaces. This is the proposed elevations of the new building. Now, this application is located within the Q100 floodplain. The triangle there indicates the location of the proposed site, so this detail has been provided by the applicant's flood risk assessment. So this is the Q100 layer, so the site is within the orange area that's flooding. This map is another floodplain map, and it also provides the climate change allowance. So again, the wee triangle, the site is within that. And this map is from Rivers Agency historical flooding, so the site did flood back in 1987 and 1989. So the applicant, the school, has provided a supporting letter demonstrating they're aware of the site that is located in the floodplain and they have mitigation measures in place. So the officer's recommendation is for the reasons listed in the report and in line with the wording of the transitions arrangements of the 2015 LDP regulations when reading the DDP and plan strategy together, the proposal does not accord with the LDP. However, for the reasons stated, it is recommended that the application is approved. It is recommended that the application is approved for the reasons listed in the report.
Thank you, Adele. There we are, members. Application is to approve. Councillor Thompson, go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, Adele, for taking us through that. I suppose I'm well aware of this site where it falls within my own DEA and well aware of the history of the site as well. But if there's mitigations there, I suppose I'm happy enough to go with an approval of those mitigations that are going to be included here. And can you elaborate any more on that, Adele, for us, just
Yes.
actually formally propose?
Yes, thanks, Councillor. So, as I say, the site is within the floodplain, and for operational reasons, they need to have the new building within the floodplain, and they're aware of that. So the building they can't infill in the floodplain, and they can't raise the building. They would need to raise it 3 metres. So the flood management plan is that once there is a flood event, all the doors will be open so that the water will be allowed to flow through the building and out. And that if there is a flooding, it happened when the kids were at school, they have emergency evacuation procedures in place. So they have, there will be no stopping of the flood water. It'll just flow through the building, and they're aware of this and accept this.
Okay, well, with that explanation, I'm going to propose the recommendation. Here, thank you.
And Councillor McCann, thanks for that, Earl.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and happy to second the recommendations as presented, and I just want to share in the mitigations, that they're obviously fit for purpose, and I hear what you're saying about it being necessary for that particular location, and I'm sure all due diligence has been done there on that particular risk. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Okay, members, so it has been proposed and seconded. All agreed? Agreed. Thank you, members. Item 5 on the agenda is to consider 6 files for decision by the Planning Committee. We have application number 1, and that's Adele again, I believe. Thank you, Adele.
Thank you, Chair. So application number 1 on paper B is LA10 2022-0035, proposed replacement of existing operational wind turbine that was approved under application K 2011-0612F with an alternative wind turbine with the hub increase from 32 to 41 metres and a rotor diameter increase from 27 to 44 metres. So the applicant is M. McKelvey, and the location is approximately 135 metres southwest of 90 Dunnamana Road, Omagh, accessing onto the Screen Road, Omagh. The recommendation is to approve. And just before I go into presentation, members, we have a couple of comments to read out. A request was received from an objector, Andy McCoon, seeking speaking rights, as he's an objector to the application. Mr. McCoon has advised that due to recent throat surgery, he would not be able to make his case and would request that the application is deferred to the next meeting to enable him to put his points towards the committee. That's our first comments. The second letter is we had a further written representation received from the residents of 40, 43A, 45 and 47 Screen Road. The representation is a summary of the previously submitted objections in that the development is not sustainable, it affects health and safety and well-being, it offends the SPPS, SPO1, REO1, DO1, DO2, DO3, DO4, DO5. The objectors request that the Planning Committee make a site visit to develop a full appreciation of the issues outlined. Now, the representation also contained visual images of the existing turbine with this proposed turbine superimposed, along with a power curve diagram and a map indicating the location of nearby homes. 2 videos were also attached to this objection, members. The first video is 47 seconds long and is taken from what we believe to be a kitchen dining area showing shadow flicker. The second video is 8 seconds long and appears to be taken from a bedroom area and shows shadow flickers. As noted, the objectors have requested the application is deferred for a site visit. So officers have viewed this additional information, believe there's no new information and there's no change to the officer's recommendation to approve. I'll now proceed to my presentation. Chair, that's okay. So first slide in front of you, members. So the red circle towards the bottom of the screen is where the existing turbine is and where the proposed turbine will be located. So an aerial demonstrating the site. So the yellow star there, that's our site. The existing farm group and buildings are located at number 90 to the north, and the identified neighbours along Screen Road there to the left. So the site plan here, members, come in off the Screen Road onto the existing laneway for the farm group. The existing turbine there is indicated the smaller circle, and the proposed turbine is the larger circle on the southeast corner there. This is elevation and sort of side plan of the proposed replacement turbine. So we have a couple of photos now in the next slide, members. So the stars here we're showing, so taken from north to south. So the first photo is the top star, and we work our way down to the bottom star. So the first photo there on the left, you're looking up at the turbine, and on the right you can see the existing buildings and the turbine on the right of it. And then we have another view here, see the turbine above the top of the trees, and you can see that on the right-hand side photo, the existing laneway, the turbine and the buildings in the foreground. So for the reasons listed within the report and in line with the wording of the transition arrangements in the 2015 LDP, when reading both the DP and the plan strategy together, the proposal does accord with the LDP for the reasons stated, and it is recommended that the application is approved for the reasons listed in the report.
Thank you, Adele. We have speaking rights on this application, and first to speak is Jonathan McKernahan. If you move forward to the speaker positions there, please, Jonathan. And Jonathan, you have 10 minutes to present to the committee. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jonathan McKernan. I'm the agent for this application. I'm grateful for the time here to speak with you this afternoon. Obviously, the application is recommended for approval, but we'd just like to address some of the concerns that have been listed by the objectors and give you some background on it. First of all, we would reiterate there is an existing turbine on this site. It's been there 9 years. It was approved in 2013. So assuming if this approval doesn't go ahead, it doesn't change the fact that existing turbine will remain. So we believe this application is actually an improvement on the existing in many respects, which we'd like to go through. The existing approval was 2013. It's very minimal conditions, none whatsoever regarding noise or shadow flicker. And in fact, the existing turbine is actually a noisier turbine, which we'll come to in a moment. But in respect to the turbine itself, it sits amongst a poultry business, a large farm business, and a fuels business. They use the power on site. One of the points made was that the existing is a 250 turbine. This is a 150. Actually, this will be a much more efficient turbine. Although the other turbine is a 250 kilowatt, it requires an awful lot of wind to actually get that. People are under the sometimes impression that if a turbine's turning, it's creating 250 kilowatts. In fact, the majority of this time, this turbine's only maybe doing 40 or 50, 60 kilowatts. So this other will be a slower turning turbine, but much more efficient. So going through the summary of points in the report from Planning Service regarding the objectors, they talk about devaluation of property with a turbine. That's not a relevant planning concern, but as I said, there isn't a turbine there already, and we hope to improve the situation for the neighbours with reduce of noise and no shadow flicker. And that brings me on to the next point, being noise. We actually submitted quite substantial details due to the number of concerns raised. One of them was this graph. The red line shows the existing turbine and the blue line shows the noise of the proposed turbine. So what we're actually agreeing to here is to replace the existing turbine with a quieter turbine. And the existing plan, the proposed plan commission now has 9 conditions on it, 3 of which relate to noise. And they actually quite robust to state that the turbine, once erected, will have to be tested within 3 months to prove that it's not exceeding its limits. There's very rigid limits set by it. And at any time following a complaint, it can be then retested. So the applicant is actually agreeing to much more robust conditions here and to reduce the noise, so that protects the neighbours more so than the existing turbine. The existing turbine, as stated, is an older model. There's no facility within it to control shadow flicker at all, except maybe stand there and turn it on and off physically, which obviously is not practical. This is a newer model of turbine, and it can come with automatic shadow flicker detection system. Now, although we have demonstrated the majority that we can comply with the shadow flicker guidance, which allows up to 30 hours a year, the applicant is willing at sensitive receptors to reduce shadow flicker to 0 by installing this software, which detects when shadow flicker is occurring and turns the turbine off and on as required. So shadow flicker can be totally eliminated. Again, a significant betterment to those that have stated that they have issues with shadow flicker at the minute. Social economic benefits, obviously it's a bigger turbine, it's going to attract much more rates for the local council, but also the existing business supports 6 jobs. So it's going to protect existing jobs. This turbine is proportional. It's worth noting also that when we originally applied, we applied for a 53-metre hub height, and upon becoming aware of the concerns of the neighbours, the applicant voluntarily, without any request from Planning Service or any concerns being raised, reduced the proposal down to a 41-metre hub height in an effort to allay any concerns that they had. So I think that it should be recognised the concessions that the applicant has already made here in trying to accommodate and facilitate any concerns that have been raised. So we've already reduced it voluntarily down as a proportional turbine. Of the last 20 applications that I've been involved in for wind turbines, The vast majority, I think 19 of them, have been for 50-metre plus hub heights. So single turbines in the area of 50-metre plus as you drive around the country are not uncommon. So this is by no means an exceptionally large single turbine. The legislation referred to by the objectors, majority of it is regard to wind farms. Wind farm turbines nowadays are at least 2, but more often 2.5 times larger than we are talking about here. It's unfair to make those comparisons and apply legislations regarding turbines are 2.5 times bigger than what we're proposing here today. So, the other point made, although not a relevant planning concern, is it's not currently grid connected. The applicant is, NE have recently opened up the grid again for managed connections. We're hoping to get a grid connection, but even so, the applicant has significant businesses and to use a lot of power on site, and this will provide a more steady stream of power to better meet their needs. So just to summarise then, noise will be significantly less and much more heavily conditioned and controlled. Shadow flicker can be eliminated. Visual impact has already been voluntarily reduced by the applicant, and it's proportional, and quite often when a turbine is replaced, most people don't even notice a proportional change in it. The site is already existing turbine, so regardless, if this application isn't approved, then the existing turbine remains legal, valid, and will obviously remain in place. This type of turbine is typical of what you're seeing around the country. It's not an exceptionally large proposal. In fact, it's smaller than most we have done recently. So hope that helps address any concerns you may have, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McKernan. Any questions, members? Everyone seems content, Mr. McKernan. You can withdraw there. Thank you. We have further representations from Councillor Victor Warrington. I don't see Councillor Warrington in the meeting. We have also representation from Tom Elliott in support of the application. If you wish to come forward, Tom. Sorry, Tom, unlike previous meetings, we have designated speaking area with the microphone. Okay, Tom. You're welcome, Tom, and as you're aware, you have 5 minutes to make your representation.
Thank you very much, Chair and Committee, for allowing the short presentation here. I have to say at the outset, personally, in years gone by, I'm not a great lover of wind turbines, simply because of the viewing that you have of them, but I have come to accept for many years now that they're a significant part of the renewable energy industry. And I was pleased whenever Fermanagh Omagh Council put into their development plan an actual policy around renewable energy, because that was something was missing from the old policy context. So I am pleased with that. Obviously, with climate change legislation now in place, the wind energy is a significant area to meet the renewable energy targets and the carbon targets that's set within that legislation or will be set. So this particular application, Chair, I understand, is for an increased height and size of the turbine. But like other applications that have gone before it, it is quite clear that it is much better controlled and much better managed, especially around shadow flicker. And Chair, when I get up in the morning, I'm looking out at a couple of wind turbines from my house as well. And they were increased in size a few years ago as well. And I have to say, there is a betterment. There's not the same noise coming from them. I can tell you that from a personal perspective. I don't hear the same noise. I'm not in line for the shadow flicker, but I am told from another neighbour that the shadow flicker is not as bad because there's an automatic system on it that turns it off. So I'm assuming that is the same in this particular instance. So therefore, there is less difficulties from an environmental health perspective, I'm assuming, in relation to that. So while it may be larger in size and structure, it is much better for the locals around it and in the area because of the reduction in noise and the reduction in shadow flicker. That's all I have to say, Chair. That's it, Chair. Sorry.
That you finished, Tom? Thank you
Yep.
very much, Tom. You can withdraw there. Thank you. So, members, we have the recommendation to approve the plan information. Councillor McCann, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I was just trying to get your attention just as at the start of that presentation, just following on from Adele's comments from I think there's somebody made contact on behalf of the objectors, possibly seeking a deferral due to throat surgery. Is that correct, Adele?
Yes, Councillor McCann. So there was a request from from objector, Mr. Andy McCoon had requested speaking rights for today, but due to recent throat surgery, he wouldn't be able to make his case, and he had requested the application was deferred to the next meeting to put his points towards the committee.
Okay. And was there a reference to the site visit?
The second representation was from the residents of 40, 43, 45 and 47. So they had summarised their objections again, and they had also requested that the application is deferred for a site visit with the committee members.
Okay. Chairman, I'm not, this application's obviously fallen, going by the face of it here, and taking the agents and the supporters' comments on board, it seems to be falling within the realms of the policy. However, this part of the planning process is democratic, and I think it's very important that we hear from the objectors to hear what they're saying directly, and the opportunity, I think, should be afforded to allow Mr. McCoon to present to the committee. I'm making the assumption that he's probably speaking on behalf of a number of objectors. I'm making that assumption. So I am. So I'm making the proposal that we do give the objectors and Mr. McCoon a chance to come and put their side and their concerns to the committee. And maybe in the meantime, we could avail of that site visit opportunity to go out and have a look and just see what they're saying, from our own perspective, and make that a formal proposal, Chair.
Right. Paul wishes to come in there. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Members, ultimately, it's a matter for yourselves in relation to deferral. I would just point out that we've introduced a new planning committee protocol, which sets out specific reasons of when we would defer an application. And a request for a deferral, the obtained speaking rights at a following meeting wouldn't fall within that, within any of those exceptions. There is the option to submit a written statement which can be read out if you're unable to attend and speak in person. And as I understand, there was an updated statement submitted by the objectors within the past few days, which Adele has summarised at the start of the meeting. So there's been no prejudice to any of the objectors here and here in the application. It's ultimately a matter for members. Members can defer for a site visit, but as I say, defer to allow speaking rights at a following meeting. That's not one of the exceptions. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Paul. Sorry, there's no speaking rights for members of the public unless you've previously applied. Sorry, your name is not on my paperwork? Oh, sorry, no, there is a protocol and you must apply for speaking rights in advance of the meeting. Sorry, they haven't obviously been granted. Sorry, I have to move on. There are no speaking rights for members of the public. Okay, sorry about that, but there is a protocol. Councillor Feely?
Sorry, Chair. Maybe Steve wants to come in there first. I was just going to come in, but.
Councillor McCann.
Thanks, Chairman. I wasn't aware that Mr. McCoon was actually sitting behind me. Maybe if we can just get clarification. He seems to have something in his hand that might dictate that he has speaking rights. Maybe if you allow him to clarify that, Chair.
I'll obviously have to speak to Paul here in relation to that because it's not in line with protocol, as I already indicated, Chair, so just bear with me a minute. Right, members, we'll just get some clarification from Philip here. Go ahead, Philip.
Members, my understanding is that this is Mr. McCoon who had initially requested speaking rights, but then indicated that he wouldn't be able to attend, and consequently, as a result of that, may not have followed exactly the process that would be required for speaking rights to be requested. However, members, Mr. McCoon is here. He clearly had indicated at one stage a desire to avail of speaking rights, and therefore, members, it would probably be appropriate to allow some latitude if members were so minded to allow him to avail of that opportunity to avail of those speaking rights today, if members are minded to proceed with the application today.
Thanks for that clarification, Philip. Well, there you are, members. We have, by your agreement, all agreed that we allow the gentleman to speak. Okay, if you could just come to the seating area, please. Again, it is slightly exceptional, this situation, but we will allow you back in if there are any issues that arise. I think you had about 3 minutes remaining, so allow that. Go on ahead, Mr. McCoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for
You're welcome, Mr. McCoon. Apologies for that, but as you are aware,
I've accepted, and as you can tell, with my throat condition, I have some impediment, and would ask if I could have a reasonable deferment.
Please sit down, Mr. McCoon. There, easier to hear when the microphone's closer to you there. Thank you.
So thank you for this opportunity. Sorry.
Right, Chair. I think Anna sorted out. I was going to suggest maybe if a glass of water would help with
yeah, that's fine.
Very much, but it doesn't. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, once the microphone's on, away you go.
Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity to speak. We respectfully request that the Planning Committee make a site visit to appreciate fully the following issues which are so at odds with the SPPS, the Local Development Plan and the Planning Case Report. The application is contrary to SP01 Sustainable Development, which underpins the NI planning system and is the first and key policy within the Council's own plan strategy. The proposed development will cause demonstrable harm to the interests of acknowledged importance. Health and well-being, public and residential amenity, and sustainability. Reasons outlined in the comments document submitted by Karen Fitzsimmons on the 16th of this month. The application is contrary to policy RE01 in that it results in unacceptable impacts on nearby residential properties in terms of visual dominance, shadow flicker, and potentially ice throw. Evidence of serious shadow flicker from the existing turbine is available on the portal, and the size and scale of the proposed turbine will exacerbate this. It will be visually dominant to all residential properties. This offends the SPPS and the LDP, core planning principle of health and well-being. And it cannot demonstrate that a separation distance of 10 times rotor diameter to an occupied or approved property can be achieved. Minimum distance not less than 500 metres for wind farms and on a case-by-case basis for individual turbines. For safety, a single wind farm turbine cannot be sited within 500 metres of one occupied dwelling. Surely a single turbine of wind farm dimensions, which this is, should not be placed within the recommended safety distance 10 times rotor diameters of 10 existing homes and 2 previously approved homes sites. The minimum safety distance of 10 occupied dwellings to a single turbine cannot surely be 200 to 300 meters distant. Ground conditions and low buildings will not protect neighbouring dwellings due to the height, size and siting of the proposed development. The application is contrary to policy DE01. The proposal will unacceptably affect the amenities of the area and residential amenity of all nearby properties. Public safety and visual amenity, which ought to be protected from overlooking and dominance. The application is contrary to policy DE02 in citing height, scale, size and proportion, and it is not energy efficient and does not minimise its impact on the environment. It is cited such that it is an adverse impact on public safety. The height, scale and proportion will be totally dominant in this area and on the background skyline. The proposal is not energy efficient and is detrimental to the environment by dissipating power uncontrolled to atmosphere 24/7, 365 as waste heat. The power generated has no other useful purpose as the site is not grid connected. The siting is unsafe and compromises public safety as described in the conflict with policy RE01. The application is contrary to policy DE04. The development greatly offends the visual amenity of the area, and the turbine will appear top of slope from all surrounding views. The existing turbine is visible 0.9 of a mile east and west and 0.6 of a mile north and south of the site. The proposed turbine is 17.5 meters, 4 double-decker buses higher than the existing turbine. It is sited on the 100-meter contour, just 10 meters below the highest points of the surrounding landscape. That means 53 meters of the structure or 12 double-decker buses will be visible
Mr. McComb, 1 minute.
highest stand. Pardon? Thank you. There is an adverse impact on public and residential visual amenity, and the scale is inappropriate, and it will be prominent and intrusive feature on the landscape and on the skyline. The application is contrary to policy DE05. The proposal is unduly prominent in the landscape and against the skyline in all directions. In summary, the development is not suitable nor necessary. The applicant can already generate 225 kilowatts, and there is no need for what is a 600 kilowatt structure to generate only 150 kilowatts. The effects on health, safety and well-being of neighbours situated within the recommended zone of safety are affected. It offends SPPS, policies SP01, RE01, DE01, 2, 4 and 5 of the LDP. For these reasons, health and well-being, public and residential amenity and sustainability, this proposal should warrant a refusal.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. McComb. Sorry if you remain there to see if any of the members have any questions for you, Mr. McComb.
Yes,
Just
of
a second.
course.
Any questions, members? Okay, no questions, Mr. McComb, you can withdraw.
Thank you.
I believe you have about 3.5 minutes left from your 10 minutes previous, Mr. McKiernan, so.
Thank you, and again for this opportunity. I would just like to go through a few of the points raised there and clarify. This turbine is capable of doing 660 kilowatts, as he stated, but it's been agreed it will run at 150 kilowatts. It will virtually be turning really, really slow, hence how it'll be so quiet. That's been heavily conditioned, And it's like having a car capable of doing 120 miles an hour. It doesn't mean you're going to drive it at 120 miles an hour. It will be run at 150. It's heavily conditioned. There's been continuous reference back and forward during this application. We specialise in wind turbines. This is the oldest application we have in our system. As say, the majority of them now are 50 metre plus. This is a 41 metre hub height. So it's at the smaller end of what's now being proposed in the majority of sites. Much of the legislation just referred to, and especially in relation to 10 rotor diameter, again refers to wind farms and not single wind turbines. If that was to be applied locally, there wouldn't hardly be a single turbine going up or being replaced in the country. We've met all the environmental legislation, despite the numerous letters of additional comments. I think this has been referred back to environmental health no less than 10 times following comments from reactors, and every time we've addressed the queries and it has been fully compliant. It is a quieter turbine. We will voluntarily reduce the flicker even to zero at sensitive locations, not just within the what's deemed to be acceptable limits. So there will be a clear benefit to the local receptors, and the applicant, as I say, has taken on board the comments, voluntarily reduced it. The other thing that was brought up there just about the level of the turbine. This turbine is slightly lower, I believe. This wasn't in the original objections, so I wasn't aware of it. But from memory, it's just slightly lower than the existing. It's certainly not in any higher level ground. So it's not going to sit on a more prominent site than the existing turbine. If anything, it's slightly further back than the existing turbine. In terms of separation, just fallover distance, it's compliant in terms of fallover distance. All environmental criteria has been fully met. And this is the most heavily scrutinised turbine we have in our system, and we've done planning for about 150 single turbines, and this is the most heavily scrutinised one we've had in about 5 years. So I fully assured that everything question that could have been asked has been asked in this case and has been addressed. But
1 minute, Mr. McKiernan.
Again, I'm happy to address any concerns you may have or take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKiernan. Any further questions to Mr. McKiernan? Okay, Mr. McKiernan, you withdraw that. Okay, members, we have heard from everyone now, so any comments? Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Chairman. Just following on from Mr. McCune's presentation, some of the points he raised obviously aren't planning matters. Some of them are. And maybe if we can just get a comment in relation to the 10 rotor diameter distances from the 10 existing homes in terms of how that fits in or outside planning policy. I know that Mr. McKiernan has said it doesn't apply to single turbines. Maybe if we just get a comment from the plan officers in relation to that, and also how, if I can just get a comment just before we wind up on how this fits into policy DE04 and DE05 in the view of the plan officers. I know that the objector has clearly shared how it doesn't fit in. I want to just see how it does fit in terms of our planning officials.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Adele.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. So the separation distance of 10 times rotor diameter, that guidance is for wind farms. So this application for a single turbine, so that guidance, each single turbine then is taken on its own merits regards that point. So within the report, officers have considered DE04 and DE05 and consider that the turbine is compliant with those policies and believe it doesn't offend those or all the other policies listed as well, or EO1.
And Paul, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And maybe members just looking at some of the specific issues that's been raised there, maybe starting with the shadow flicker. The report, the planning report that's before members deals with shadow flicker. And, you know, the sort of guidance says that shadow flicker in itself can occur up to 30 minutes a day or 30 days a year. So there's no, basically the committee report says there's no adverse impact in terms of the modelling that's been done from shadow flicker in terms of this proposal. Now, the agent has referred to a condition, and if members were minded to approve the application, then we could put on a condition that will restrict the shadow flicker to basically zero if the circumstances at the site arise that would cause shadow flicker. So we can put that on as a condition and it'll meet the test of a condition. We have done that before, if that's something the members are minded. In terms of noise then, members, the report deals with noise as well. The limits are within the ETC guidelines. EHD has also said that they have no issues subject to conditions and the noise will be restricted by way of a condition. And again, that meets the legal test of conditions. In terms of the visual impact, again, then members, that's dealt with within the report. An officer's opinion is that it complies with policy. There's no conflicts in terms of this proposal with the plan strategy and the recommendation as they approve. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor McLaughlin, John, go ahead.
Thank you. I think Paul has addressed some of the what I was going to ask. The agent says that compared to the 2011 application, that there is a greater degree of restrictions placed upon this current application, and the existing turbine will remain if it isn't replaced with this one. So basically, I think Paul has addressed it. We can place restrictions on this new application that we cannot do on a previous application. And does the current legislation apply further restrictions that wouldn't have been in place in 2011?
Yes, thanks, Chair. So condition 3 then, members, sets out all the noise limits at all the various sensitive receptors. And that's been taken from the model and agreed with environmental health. So that's on as a condition and we can enforce it. And if there is a complaint in due course, condition 4 deals with that, and the applicant and the agent will have to undertake further assessments and demonstrate that they're in compliance. So that's not a condition that's developed more recently. Wouldn't have been on some of the older turbines. The one related to shadow flicker as well, that's related to new turbine models. So that software is in the new turbine models, and we have tended to put that in where there's an issue of shadow flicker. So that's not within the conditions before members at the minute. But if members wanted that added on as a condition, we can do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. So members, the recommendation is to approve the plan information. Councillor O'Reilly.
Chair, can I just be reminded of the distance then in a single wind turbine where the rotor distance and that to whatever it is, 500 meters or whatever in a wind farm scenario, what is it in a single wind turbine? And I take it that there is no properties then within whatever the single wind turbine exclusion zone would be.
Dale, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks, Councillor O'Reilly. So as I say, the 500 metres and the 10 is for wind farms. Mm-hmm. So that is the guidance for wind farms. So then each individual turbine is assessed on its own merits. Mm-hmm. So then we look at what is within 10 times the rotor diameter of the proposed turbine. And in this case, there are dwellings within 10 times the rotor diameter, but the submitted noise reports and the submitted shadow flicker reports demonstrate that with mitigation, there would be no unacceptable impact on the identified properties within the 10 times of the rotor diameter.
Okay. And Chair, just the objector was speaking on a number of occasions about safety impact and that of the actual turbine itself and the whole thing of it falling or anything like that. But there is no properties in close proximity.
There's no properties within the fallover distance of the turbine. So it's the height of the turbine itself plus 10%. So there is no properties within the fallover distance of the turbine.
That's grand. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I can see the concerns of the residents living close by, but from what I've listened to from the agent and from our planning officers, with the suitable restrictions placed upon it, I think it would be better to go with this new one. So I'm recommending we go with the officer's recommendations with the restrictions around sound and flicker been applied as discussed with the officers during the debates.
Thanks for that, John. Any other members?
Happy
Go
to
ahead,
second the
Councillor Rennie.
proposal, Chair.
Thanks for that, Alan. So the recommendation has been proposed and seconded. Are we all agreed? All right, Councillor McCann.
Chair, I suppose, you know, there's been real concerns raised by the objectors, and I have great sympathy for them. But I suppose on the other side of that, the planning policy is in place as well, and you know, from the presentations, you know, this application seems to fit within the plan policy, and therefore our committee hands is tied as to what we can do with it in terms of rejecting it. You know, we have to take each application as it comes at us in line with the planning policy. In relation to the conditions, I would like to see a condition added to this list in relation to shadow flicker, Paul, if that can be incorporated into that with the consent of the proposer and seconder.
John, are you happy to accept that condition? Thank you, Alan. So with the added condition, are we all agreed, members? Great, thank you, members. Moving on then to application number 2, and that's Seamus, I believe.
Okay, members, thank you, Chair. So application number 2 is LA 10 2023 2271F for a dwelling. The applicant is RJ Smith, and the location is adjacent to and east of 4 Killybrack Road, Omagh, and the recommendation is to refuse planning permission. Now, first off, we have a supporting statement from the agent, Marcus Kerr. I'm going to read a summary of that. So Marcus has stated that, in his opinion, obviously, the siting, layout, orientation replicates the adjoining dwelling. The density is reflective of surrounding established developments. Density calculations presented indicate that the proposal would, if approved, result in a density less than some of the surrounding examples. The agent believes there is no consistency in terms of dwelling height, scale, form, or massing, and acknowledges that a lot of dwellings are single-storey. However, there are 2-storey dwellings in the wider surrounds. He has stated that in Icedale Court, Killybrack Road, 99B and 9C Killybrack Road are recent additions to the established housing in the area, and that the Planning Authority has therefore accepted a wide range of house types in this area. In addition, the change in ground levels in this area and mature vegetation on the northern boundary of the site create a visual break between the proposed dwelling and the other dwellings in the area. This is indicated in the photograph below, which is in the statement and should be on the portal. In relation to criteria D, the first reason for refusal regarding the local identity and distinctiveness, it is argued that there is no consistent established built character at this location. The site is located at a transition zone between large-scale commercial developments and the established housing area, and due to topography and vegetation, the proposed dwelling reads with these commercial buildings and the residential developments. Therefore, the permitting of the proposed dwelling would not have any impact on the local identity and distinctiveness, as it is quite random and not consistent. In relation to criteria K of the first reason for refusal, the proposed dwelling will incorporate energy efficiency measures and is considered that the use of a redundant piece of curtilage of the existing dwelling to provide an additional dwelling in an urban area is an efficient use of land resource. It is, his words, accepted by the Planning Authority that this can be dealt with by condition and will also be required by building control. In relation to criteria A and B of the second reason for refusal, the arguments set out in response to criterion B, C, and D above of the first refusal reason also apply to these. And that's the agent's statement. We'll move on to the presentation. So we have in front of us here a snippet of the submitted site location plan. The site identified in red and the wider land controlled or owned by the applicant in blue. The submitted block plan shows, again, it shows a little of the wider area, but our sites on the right hand or more or less centre of the image showing a green lawn around it. The existing house then to the immediate left hand side. This is the dwelling that is proposed on the site. It's full application, 2-storey dwelling, fairly standard in terms of its design and appearance. So the blue star, again, shown on the OS map, indicates the proposed site. You can see the existing single-storey dwelling to the left-hand side. Aerial imagery, again, blue star indicates our site and the existing single-storey house to the left. The properties up to the rear there, we'll move on to them in a bit, but they're all single-storey properties. So photographs off the site, 3 photographs partially panning around, showing the first image showing the existing single-storey house front on, moving around then, and the image on the right showing more of the site, but you can still obviously see and appreciate the single-storey site or dwelling beside it. So again, I move back to the dwelling elevations, if you can look at it with that in mind. So what we have in the photographs is the single-storey house on the site, and right beside it we're going to have, well, what is proposed is the dwelling now in your image. There's a zoomed-in view of the existing house and the site to allow you to see the relative proximity of both and the tightness of the site. It's fairly restricted in its nature, and it will be, there's no getting away from the single-storey house. This 2-storey dwelling will be right beside it and right against it. View looking up the Killybrag Road, again, self-explanatory. You can see the single-storey dwelling on the left and the extent of the site then straight in front of you. And again, I've just put this image in for myself as much as anything to save going back and forward, but it's to allow you the opportunity to flick between the two and see that on that screenshot or on that photograph there, what we'd be looking at if approved on that site relative to the dwelling beside it is that 2-storey dwelling. Another image straight across, looking right across the Killybrag Road at the existing single-storey house. And on that view, we would have the side elevation, the bottom side elevation there, just above the ground floor plan, is the elevation that would be facing onto the Killybrag Road. Those passing the site, be it on foot, in car, whatever way they would progress past the site, it would be that relatively blank gable that would be facing the public on that approach. An idea of the character, Marcus hinted at the character in his supporting statement. The most proximate dwellings to this site can be seen in these 2 shots here. Single story, albeit the Killybrag Road does rise up, but there's not a significant level difference. And as you travel along from the Silver Birches direction towards this site, you're looking at the single-storey dwelling. As you migrate up the hill, this is what you'd be faced with then on the left-hand side, image. You're looking at them single-storey dwellings, and on the right hand, the same bungalows by design. So the policy DEO2, design quality, council will support development proposals which demonstrate a high-quality built environment in relation to their architectural style and detailed design features, their siting, layout, orientation and density, and height, scale, form, massing and proportion. And the reason I've highlighted this is those are our concerns with this proposal in terms of how it will sit. The layout, its orientation, the scale, height, form, massing, proportion, and how it will sit and how it will read with what exists in and around it. Policy clarification goes on to state that all development proposals are required to take account of and be integrated with the local context and built form. Now, again, just to flesh it out, that's where our concerns or where officers' concerns exist here, that it's not believed that this 2-storey dwelling is and would integrate with the local context or the built form. The 2-storey element seems to be born out of the tight nature of the site and the need to rise up over 2 levels because the site's just not big enough to allow construction of a single-storey dwelling that would be of a big enough scale. Further below then, there's a need to ensure that measures are put in place to address the impacts of climate change, including adoption, avoiding development in flood risk areas, reducing greenhouse emission and design. Basically speaking, there's no information has been submitted with this application to demonstrate that any energy efficiency measures have been incorporated or do form part of this proposal. HOU 05, Shaping Our Housing Home, and this is, as Marcus has said, a lot of this is overlaps, but it's the same ethos here. Council will support development proposals for residential development where it is demonstrated that they will create quality and sustainable residential environment which meets the following. They retain or enhance the positive aspects of the character and appearance of the surrounding area. As stated, officers don't believe that that would be the case here, and they would not result in unacceptable damage to the local character, environmental quality, or residential amenity of established residential areas. On approach towards this site, up to Killybrack Road, this is going to stand out and look completely out of kilter with what's there. The policy clarification within established residential areas is imperative to ensure that the proposed density of new housing, together with its form, and this is more important than the density in this instance, the form, scale, massing and layout will respect local character and environmental quality. So, members, for the reasons listed within the report and in line with the wording of the transitional arrangements in the 2015 LDP regulations, when reading both the DDP and the plan strategy together, the proposal is not considered to accord with the LDP for the reasons stated, and there are no other material considerations to indicate that it should be approved contrary to the LDP. It is recommended that the application is refused for the following reasons. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Seamus. And no speaking rights on this one, members, so over to yourselves. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Thank you, Seamus, for your report. Just with regard to, and I know the way you have put on your slides there, you're going up to as far as Beaver Park there on the left, obviously Lisnelly Park on the right, which is with my own DEA again. But if you went to the top of the hill there, there's at least 2 new houses on the left that are 2-storey. Am I not right in that one? So can you tell me how that fits in? You know, if we're looking at that, I know where you're coming from with this, but how do those 2 dwellings, I think it's 2 dwellings at the top of the hill, how do they fit into it if they're 2-storey? Just beyond curiosity.
Well, it's I suppose it's the old saying, Councillor, it's every site on its merits. It's the uniqueness of this site and the fact that it is such a constrained site. It's constrained by the road on one side and by the single-storey dwelling on the other side, and it occupies such a prominent position as you're going up that hill. I can't say I know exactly the 2 dwellings you're on about, but at the same time, this is, you know, this is right in front of you. And as you go up that, if that proposal were built, it would, I think it would stand out so much so for 2 main reasons. The fact that it's hemmed in between a house and the road, and the fact that it would completely dominate the house beside it. Now, it's not dominance that we're looking at here, but in terms of the character aspect, how it would look, one would look against the other. And I think our members, officers believe that it's contrary to policy for those reasons. The other houses on the top of the hill, as you go on up, there's other 2-storey houses, and it's not that I've purposely left them out, but I think the context is different as you go on up over the hill and you move into a different variety of housing on flat land. But this is set apart by reason of the site itself, by its constrained nature, and by where it is in the settlement, in that particular part of the settlement.
Okay. Thanks, Seamus. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Seamus. Any other comments, members? The recommendation is to refuse, members. Councillor O'Reilly.
Chair, in light of all that we've here clarified there, I'm happy to propose the recommendation as is.
Thank you, Tom. And Councillor McCann.
I'll second the recommendations, Chair.
Okay, members, it has been proposed and seconded to refuse the application. Are we all agreed? You members, moving on then to application number 3. That's you again, Seamus, I believe.
Yep, thanks, Chair. So application number 3 is LA 10 2024 02720 and it's for the erection of a dwelling and detached domestic garage. The applicant is B. Wilson, the location 150 metres northeast of 28 Lockmuck Road, Omagh, and the recommendation is to refuse planning permission. There's a few housekeeping type issues at the start with this one as well, Chair. We have very recent, just yesterday, a response from Road Service on this one. As I say, it was only just received yesterday, so I want to make members and the applicant and agent aware that the Road Service have recommended refusal for the development as the proposed development impacts on the land take associated with the planned route of the A5 Western Transport Corridor dual carriageway and would have permitted prejudice the implementation of this strategically significant Northern Ireland flagship project. Now, as I say, that was received yesterday. We progressed with a recommendation on this in the absence of that, knowing that when we got it, we could address it. The agent has on his submission outlined that the A5 land take does come close, but this is the first we have had of that recommendation from Roads. We have also received a supporting statement from the agent fairly recently. Now, there's some information contained within that is confidential in its nature. Perhaps it would be appropriate at this stage to check with the agent if he intends to discuss that or if he wants, Chair, if you're minded to go into confidential business at this stage, or I'm happy to proceed with the presentation in the first instance.
The agent's with us, if he could indicate that he wishes to go into that information.
I'll continue, I'll present, and that can be, yeah.
Obviously, you need to be very careful then on your presentation not to mention the confidential information. Go ahead, Seamus.
At this stage, it would be remiss, I suppose, for me not to state that the information provided is in terms of special domestic circumstances, and on the information we have received, it wouldn't be enough to satisfy the policy, and we would be, if pushed on that, would be recommend refusal on those grounds also. But we'll proceed with the presentation as is. So the application site is identified in red. There's an existing laneway just immediately south west of the red outline, which would appear to serve the farmland and other farmland. It is proposed to create a new access running inside that hedge line that defines the lane, migrating through the field, and you can see the site indicated. The site's to be located in there behind a mature hedgerow. There are existing farm buildings annotated on the site location plan, with the remainder of land owned outlined in blue. Photographs of the site, they're showing the laneway. It's important to note, I suppose, that the laneway is not being used. It's being, the laneway is to be made in behind that existing hedge on the left-hand side image and travelling up along the fence that can be seen on the right-hand image. The siting proposed is in behind that thorn hedge then in the background. The blue arrow shows the location of the proposed site relative to the farm group. And as you can see, the farm group there sitting alongside the road made up of 3 to 4 buildings. Sorry, I go back to that picture and you can see the other blue arrow in the right-hand image indicates where the site access is to be. Application for a dwelling on a farm or a dwelling in association with a farm business. As standard practice, we have consulted with DERA and their response came back indicating that the farm business identified on the P1C form has not been in existence for more than 6 years. The farm business ID was allocated in 2023. It is a Category 1 business and it is only claimed in 23 and 24. Now, it's important to note that that's not the only way that farm businesses can demonstrate that they're active and established. But, and again, the agent may wish to clarify this, but on the information received to date, The agent has been quite upfront that this is a new farm business for reasons that he will go into, but it hasn't been established, and as I say, DARA have verified that for us. So the policy relating to dwellings on farm businesses, Council will support applications for a new dwelling on a farm business which is currently active and has been established for a minimum of 6 years. As indicated and as acknowledged, it hasn't. So it fails in that regard. The policy clarification goes on to state that one of the clearest ways of demonstrating that a farm business is currently active is by providing an active DARA business ID number. We have an active business DARA business ID number, but it's not established for the required 6 or more years. The submitted farm maps show the entirety of the land attached to this farm business. So if you look to the very south of that, the portion shown in yellow, that field in yellow, our site is just immediately north of that in the left-hand corner of the northernmost field of that. And then I'll go on again then to the road's refusal reason that I read at the start. I have information here in terms of the personal and domestic circumstances. I suppose we should wait on to see if the agent wants to explore that avenue in his statement. But as I say, there's confidential information contained, so it may be best to put that off until we see what the agent wants to do. So, for the reasons listed within the report, in line with the wording of the transitional arrangements in the 2015 LDP regulations, reading both the DDP and the plan strategy together, the proposal does not accord with the LDP for the reasons stated, and there are no other material considerations to indicate that it should be approved contrary to the LDP. It is recommended that the application is refused for the following reason, and that is to move this. The proposal is contrary to Strategic Policy SP01, Furthering Sustainable Development, Policy DE03, Sustaining Rural Communities, and Policy HOU11, Dwelling on a Farm Business, in that it has not been demonstrated that the farm business is currently active and has been established for at least 6 years.
Thank you, Seamus. We have speaking rights, so if David and Bert wish to come forward. David, you're very welcome, and Bert, you're welcome back to us as well, Bert. So, as you know, David, there's 10 minutes between the two of you. You can allocate whichever time you require between yourselves there. So go ahead, proceed now. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's my turn to go first. But the road service was back funny. We got an email from A5WTC, and it stated, "Dear David," this was last week, "Mr. Wilson has made a request for an access to be provided between the existing laneway and the shades within partial 182015. We can advise that an access can be provided. The current accommodation works plan copy enclosed shows the two provisions, black triangles." And that's from Amanda of the A5WTC consultation team. So whilst you've got a letter, Seamus, if I'd have known that was coming up, I would have shared that with you, but it's just to say that they're giving us an access to the parcel of land. The letter I sent last week, I'm going to read it out, and be careful not to mention the health issues. But in any case, the history of the parcel land consists of approximately 17 acres. And that it was bought in 1991 for a son, Bill, or William Wilson. Bill has 3 sons. At that time, Bill, aged 26, was in good health and lived in a dwelling in Ecclesville Road. He acquired all year's license and bits and pieces. And look, due to ill health, at the age of, I think it was late 2010, was unable to carry on his job and was unable to farm the little bit of land that Bill had left for him. So the property was purchased for the sole intention of helping to provide for Bill, but due to his ill health, he retained all the monetary proceeds from this little parcel of land was used for Bill's upkeep. He's currently residing in a nursing home, and there's always hope at some stage that he'll return to normal health and farm this parcel of land himself. Mr. Wilson and two other sons had farmed in partnership. It's important to note that this parcel of land was never introduced into the main farm business. It's always kept aside an intention to let Bill continue a farming practice on the portion of land on his own strength. If and when he got better. 2018, Mr. Wilson, born in 1940, was advised by doctors to retire. That's back in 2018. He was 78 years of age. So at that point, he decided, look, the solicitors and doctors both recommended that he separate his business and get a separate business ID to safeguard a portion of land for himself. For Bill. So that's really the crux of where we got to. The land was farmed by other farmers. Mr. Wilson said about establishing the farm business on it in 2018. So from 18 onwards, Bert would have farmed. He maintained the hedges. And it's difficult to separate from the business ID, but he had to, and he's been sort of just looking after that element himself. It's 2 years actually. If you look, it's 2023 and 2024, not 1 year. So there's 2 years been claimed for it. The previous 4 years was literally growing a little bit of silage and offloading that to farmers around him to generate a little bit of income. And we're talking minuscule here. We're not talking major. There might have been a turn of maybe £1,000 a year changed hands, and that went straight to Bill, or to Bill through his daughter, or through his sister and Bert's daughter, who's looking after his financial and his well-being. So, look, I suppose before I hand over to Bill, the farm has been actively farmed for more than 6 years. It's in particular from 2018 on, when ill health hit, he obviously retired from counselling, whatever, at that stage. Hedge cutting was carried out, normal duties, a little bit of grass sold off here and there, and he used bits and pieces of it. I suppose that's what this crux is all about, not necessarily Bill's health, but the history is important because it gives you an idea what Bill was trying to do, as any father would do for his sons. And that's where we are. So I think it has been actively farmed. And paper is very hard to prove that. But if you looked at the fields, you'd know they were maintained. You know the hedgerows were well kept. And I can take it back at least to 2018, if not before. So I'll hand you over to Bert, and he'll finish it off.
Go ahead, Bert. You've got 5 minutes left.
Thank you. We purchased this property in 1991. It was the intention that this property would be at some stage handed over to our oldest son, Bill. He drove an oil tanker for a horse, and about 25 years ago he suffered from bouts of depression, and he lost his driver's license. And unfortunately, he has been from one hospital to another. And the past 10 years, needs 24-hour care and is permanently in room 33, Hillcrest.
Sorry, Bert, I'll interrupt you there. I do believe we need to go into confidential if you wish to proceed with that. I think it would only be fair. Proposed Councillor McCloughery, seconded Councillor Thompson, that we go into confidential. If we could ask the members of the public to remove themselves from the chamber, please. Thank you. We need to go back to confidential first.
Talk about confidential. All right, let's go.
Propose Councillor McCann, seconded Councillor McCloughery to come out of confidential business. We need Tom Elliott back in into it. David, if you could request Tom to come back in just to be finalise this, just Tom maybe at this stage. Explain what's happening. Tom, during the presentation by David and Bert, we had to go into confidential, as you're aware. During the conversation, I believe we're about to get a recommendation for a deferral, so we no longer will bother taking your presentation at this stage. Tom, if you excuse us for that. So, Councillor McCloughery.
Thank you, Chair. As we discussed in confidential, and given the points raised, and also what the knowledge that we as councillors have, we're seeking a deferral to allow the agent to submit evidence and also to clarify. And I'm not sure if Paul could maybe guide me to which type of deferral, because if that information shows that the reason for refusal is circumvented or is proven different, then I don't believe this needs to come back to the committee, and the officers can make the direction themselves.
Happy, Chair. Yeah, members, I think if it was delegated back to officers to deal with through the scheme of delegation, we'd have an opportunity to receive further information on the issues, consider those. If it was acceptable and complied with policy, then it would issue. If it wasn't, then it would go back on the weekly list as a refusal again.
Thanks for that, Paul. And Councillor Thompson then.
Yep, thank you very much, Chair. And I'll second Councillor McCloughery's proposal. We deferred at the stage and just go back to officers if applicable, and if not, there'll be further actions taken. But I'm happy to second Councillor McCloughery's proposal at this stage.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation for a deferral. All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Thanks, Bert. Okay, we're moving on. They're coming in. Okay, moving on to application number 4. And I believe that's you, Seamus, again, please.
Sorry. Application number 4, LA 10 2021-00140, erection of a domestic dwelling. The applicant is Nick Coulter. Location is adjacent to the east of 23 Irish Town Road, Omagh, and the recommendation is to refuse planning permission. In the first instance, we have a supporting statement in lieu of speaking rights submitted on behalf of the applicant. So the applicant wishes to thank the committee for hearing this statement and considering the application for a dwelling located in the central area of Omagh Town. The proposed dwelling can be positioned on site without harming the residential amenity of the neighbouring house. It will bring benefits for the residents of the existing dwelling by improving the access arrangements at the laneway junction with Irish Town Road. The principal issue in front of the committee is the fact that the existing laneway which travels through the field to the site is within a floodplain. The applicant requests that the committee deems this proposal an exception under FLD 01 and allow Rivers Agency to consider the matter again in detail. The committee should be aware that earlier in the process on the 10th of May 21, Rivers Agency stated the proposal was entirely acceptable. From the outset, it is critically important to acknowledge that the proposal should be considered as having two parts, namely the proposed house and the proposed access to the house along an existing laneway. The proposed dwelling is in land that is not liable to flooding. The house will be well above the level of the floodplain and there's no risk that it will flood. No other part of the scheme, the laneway is within the floodplain. The floodplain is a characteristic of a substantial part of the central area of Omagh The public road network is also affected by this. As explained in detail in the case auditor's report, the only issue of concern is that part of the laneway is within the floodplain. On the very rare occasion that flooding occurs on the lane, residents will be able to access directly onto the Great Northern Road. The proposal includes a reasonable means of access to the property on those rare occasions of a major flooding event. The house itself will be unaffected by flooding. There's an existing laneway across the field to access the house. The proposal does not include anything that would raise the level of the laneway or negatively impact the floodplain. We wish to refer to the three overarching matters of planning policy, that being SP01, presumption in favour of sustainable development unless demonstrable harm is caused. They say no realistic harm would be caused by the house or by using the laneway. The Spatial Growth Strategy, Part 1, Paragraph 6.20, which seeks to focus development in Omagh. This encourages the best use of urban land. The site is a highly accessible location where development is specifically encouraged by the LDP. And LDP Part 2, Paragraph 6.1, which defines the aim of the Council Flood Risk Management Policy. It states, the aim of the LDP is to prevent future development that may be at risk from flooding or that may increase flooding elsewhere. The proposed house itself is not policy in the floodplain. The proposed house itself is not in the floodplain, so the house is not contrary to the aim of the policy. The laneway will remain as it is, i.e. the levels will not be raised, so the use of the laneway will not increase flooding elsewhere. In other words, the physicality of the lane does not offend the aim of the policy either. In summary, the overarching policy is all in favour of the proposed dwelling. The laneway is the only matter of contention, and we must turn to flood policy FLD01 of the LDP. Under FLD01, minor development is allowed in floodplains. There are a range of development types that fall under this classification. Examples are provided at paragraph 6.8 of the LDP, but these examples do not preclude other types of development being deemed minor. It is clear that the classification is open-ended. It is our view that using the existing laneway to access the dwelling is a form of minor development. We say it is minor development because the levels of the lane will not be altered by the proposal and there will be no effect on the floodplain. The access is the only matter of contention, and any reasonable assessment of the matter must conclude that it clearly falls within the scope of minor development. As stated already, the proposed housing is entirely in line with the overarching policies and the lane will not harm the floodplain. On this basis, we ask the committee to today determine that the proposal is an exception to FLD01. We are not asking the committee to approve the application today. We are only asking the committee to acknowledge that the contentious element of the proposal, i.e. the laneway, is a form of minor development under FLD01 and therefore an exception under the policy. By confirming this, the committee will allow Rivers Agency to consider the matter in detail and provide their expert feedback on the scheme. After that, the final decision can be made. Please note the applicant stands ready to submit any additional information that may be required by Rivers Agency. In closing, we thank the committee for hearing this statement. And we'll move on then to the presentation. So we have the site location as identified in red. The topmost portion of that is out, a small piece of access that exists serving number 23 out onto the Irish Town Road. You'll know it as King James Bridge with the traffic lights on it as you're heading over towards Duns. This block plan shows again the access in blue, the proposed location for the dwelling in blue, and you can see to the left hand side of that the existing dwelling at number 23, and although faint you can see the access to number 23 as it exists running more or less parallel with the proposed access. Works to be done at the junction of the Irish Town Road. There's a bit of a widening of this access to allow cars to negotiate the bend to be able to swing in and out of the access point to access the carriageway in a safe manner. This has been agreed and accepted by DFI Roads. The image on the left then shows the existing site, the site as it exists. You can see the outline of number 23 more or less to the centre bottom of the map image. And then on the right hand side you have the aerial imagery showing the same thing, but it's the aerial photography. This is the access, or this is looking towards the existing access. You can see the listed building in front of you. The lane serving number 23 goes up the hill The image to the right-hand side, you can see just to the left, a little bit of concrete off the tarred lane. That's where this access will swing down in to then migrate more or less, as I say, parallel to the existing laneway. Those are photographs of the site for the laneway as it exists. The river is to our left-hand side. The lane is to migrate, and the right-hand image is to be to the right-hand side of that image. And as you see beyond the tallest tree on your right-hand side, the site is to be located in there on a good bit further back. This image, the image to the left, is taken standing on that concrete apron that I mentioned a few seconds ago, looking down, directly down at the river. You can see the bridge to your left. The image to the right then is looking further up, and you can see the land begins to rise way in the foreground, and the site is to be located on around that, slightly around that corner. The access proposed is to roughly travel along those low bushes and hedging along the right-hand side of the right-hand image. The Rivers Agency Q100 climate change fluvial flood map is indicated here. You can see the red triangle is the approximate location of the house, and the yellow wash area shows the climate change flood area. It includes part of the access and the access point where the modifications are to take place at the Irish Town Road. DFI Rivers has confirmed that the flood map NA indicates that part of the site lies within the 1 in 100 year fluvial floodplain, which is a level of 69.27 metres AOD. The flood hazard map NA show the predicted 1 in 100 year climate change flood level to be 69.65. The finished floor level of the house will be, as proposed, at 75 with a gravel laneway extension. Consequently, the site for the house is well outside the flood zone, and there is no conflict in that regard in terms of the dwelling. However, the site is indicated by the red star here, and the blue wash area shows the floodplain. There are flood defences along the Drumragh River, but as shown by the black outline, but they're in the opposite bank. In any event, Rivers Agency have confirmed that the defences existing are not structurally adequate, and as a result do not provide the minimum standard fluvial flood protection. And as I say, they are on the opposite bank in any event. We have the block plan here again showing the proposed location of the house, and on the right-hand side, further flood map showing the area of flooding. So both the climate change and the Q100 fluvial floodplain map show large portions of the proposed access lane within the floodplain. Most, if not all, the access, including that at the junction of the Irish Town Road, requires work or development. You can cast your mind back to the photograph shown. While it is stated that there's an existing lane, it's completely under grass. So to make the point that this wouldn't require development isn't strictly true. There'd be a certain amount of development required to bring the existing lane up to standard and to do the lane extension and to do the modifications at the Irish Town Road junction, all of which, in terms of the access lane, is within the floodplain. So, members, for the reasons listed within the report and in line with the wording of the transitional arrangements in the 2015 LDP regulations, when reading both the DDP and the plan strategy together, the proposal is not considered to accord with the LDP for the reasons stated, and there are no other material considerations to indicate that it should be approved contrary to the LDP. It is recommended that the application is refused for the following reason, that being that the proposal is contrary to the plan strategy policies SP01 and FLD01, as the development is within the floodplain and does not fall within any of the three exceptions within the policy, nor is it minor development. And that is me, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Seamus. We have speaking rights on this application from Christopher Gormley, who's objecting to the application. Christopher, if you could come forward. Sorry, I can't hear you. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine if the two of you wish to come forward here to there's 2 spaces allocated. Yeah, sit down. Neither there. Now you have 5, together you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, so you can allocate the time between yourselves. We will have the timer going here. I'll indicate when there's a minute left or so. Okay. Go ahead there now, please.
Good afternoon, councillors and council officers. My husband and I are objectors to this planning application, and we both support Case Officer Michelle McGuckin's recommendation in her report dated March 22 and Case Officer Darren Lawther's recommendation in his updated report of June 24, and the unanimous decision of the 3 OMA planning officers who formed the planning group meeting that reviewed the Case Officer's report, and all 3 planning officers concurred with his recommendation that the planning application should be refused. Planning application reference LA10 2021-14 is an outline planning application made to the council by Mr Coulter for the erection of a domestic dwelling on a site immediately adjacent to our property at 23 Irishtown Road in close proximity to King James Bridge. We've been living at this address since we bought the property in July 21. Our house is accessed via a narrow entrance immediately adjacent to the very small single-storey building which was once a tool house on the Dunn Stores and OMA Town Centre side of King James Bridge. Our house is approached via a long straight drive, which is immediately adjacent and parallel with the application site. One of the primary reasons for us purchasing our home is that the site is extremely private. It has no neighbours immediately adjoining our property, and we expected that, and we still do expect that to remain the case. We purchased the site in the full knowledge that Mr Coulter had previously made 2 similar unsuccessful outline planning applications to DOE Planning Service. Firstly, in K 1999-0468 in July 99, and secondly in K 2005-1107 in May 2005, both of which were for the construction of residential development on the application site. We believe that the first of these planning applications was either withdrawn because Planning Service was going to issue a refusal, or actually refused planning permission by DOE Planning Service. We understand that the second planning application was refused planning permission by DOE Planning Service, though the planning portal indicates that this application was withdrawn. And we further understand that the latter decision was appealed to the Planning Appeals Commission, where Planning Service's decision to refuse planning was upheld. The first Case Officer's report for this planning application, Case Officer Michelle McGuckin's report dated March 22, recommended this application for refusal with 4 reasons. However, in the interim, the Council's Local Development Plan 2030 plan strategy has been issued and adopted by the Council on the 16th of March 23. The second Case Officer's report for this planning application, Officer Darren Lawther's report dated June 24, also recommended this application for refusal on the basis that the application does not accord with or is in conflict with the Council's planning policies, Planning Policy FLD01, Development in Floodplains, and Strategic Planning Policy SP01, Furthering Sustainable Development. One thing that all 3 planning applications have in common is the fact that the field that comprises the site, the subject of this planning application, lies within the floodplain of the Drumragh River, and the field is undefended by any flood defences or barriers. Planning Policy FLD01 Development in Floodplains, contained within the Area Development Plan 2030 plan strategy, deals with the flood risk management. Planning Policy FLD01 states that the Council will not permit development within the floodplain unless it falls into one of the following exceptions, which is defended areas, undefended areas, and development which is of overriding regional or sub-regional economic importance. The proposed development is an application for the development of a single domestic dwelling in an undefended area, therefore exceptions 1 and 3 do not apply. And with the second exemption to FLD01, undefended areas, there are 5 exceptions: replacement buildings, development for agricultural use, water compatible development, the use of land for sport or outdoor recreation, amenity, open space or nature conservation, and the extraction of mineral deposits. The proposed development is for a new domestic dwelling where one does not currently exist or previously existed, therefore none of the 5 listed exemptions in FLD01 apply.
1 minute remaining.
Both the existing access, which the applicant does not control, would need to be adapted, and the proposed laneway will involve development in the floodplain. Such development is deemed by the Council to not be sustainable development, as therefore contrary to Strategic Planning Policy SP01, furthering sustainable development. As stated in Case Officer Darren Author's updated report in June 24, given the policy issues in relation to the impact of flooding on the development, the proposal is not considered a sustainable development. Further, Case Officer Darren Author's report clearly states that the proposal is contrary to FLD01, as the development is within the floodplain. He states that the works at the road are also in the floodplain. The stoned area will need widened and improved to allow access. This is also development and contrary to FLD01. It is not good planning and practice to permit new development that requires access through an area of flooding. And in conclusion, we would therefore respectfully request that the councillors present here today at this planning committee refuse this application for the reasons stated in the various reports prepared by the council's own planning officers and in line with previous decisions made in relation to this site over the last 25 years, which have all recommended refusal, and that refusal has been upheld at the PAC upon appeal.
Thank you, and that's your time up. Thank you. Any questions, members? No questions. Thanks very much for your presentation. If you withdraw back to the public area, thank you. So, members, the recommendation is to refuse the planning permission. Any comments? Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it does no harm to call these applications in, so we can obviously go to the detail. And from what I've heard, obviously from Mrs. Gormley and from the planning officer's report, I'm happy to propose recommendations.
So, Mr. Zachary, go ahead.
Yeah, fairly knowledgeable of this area as well, and having heard what the planning officers and the residents that live there, I'm happy to second going with the recommendations made by the officers.
Thanks for that, John. So we have it proposed and seconded that the recommendation is to refuse planning permission. Are we all agreed, members? Great, thank you, members. And at this stage, I think I will propose a comfort break, and we'll return again at 4:10, please. Okay, members, application number 5. And it's over to Seamus. Thank you, Seamus.
Thanks, Chair. So application number 5 is LA 10 2022-0092F, proposed 7 number detached dwellings and garages. Sites 6 and 7 to have proposed septic tanks, while sites 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 are to have proposed package treatment plants. That's part of the description. Applicant is Cherrybrook Developments Limited. The location is lands approximately 150 metres north of 45 Ballinamullen Road, Killyclahar, Omagh. The recommendation is to refuse planning permission. So to start with, I have two letters of support to read out. The first one is from Daniel McCrossan, MLA for West Tyrone. He states that he's writing in support of this application and he would be grateful if we could make sure committee members are aware of it. Given that there has not been a single objection to this application and the high demand for properties in Killyclahar, I would ask committee to approve the application. In correspondence with the applicant's agent, they have highlighted what they claim is an inconsistent approach by the planning department. They say a much higher bar has been set on this application than on similar applications, and there's a reference number quoted here, 232374F. Mr. McCrossan states that he'd be grateful if the committee could ensure consistency in the approach taken across the entire council area. I have another letter of support from Tom Buchanan, MLA. He states that he writes to offer his support for the above planning application. It's a small development proposed and it's essential to meet the growing housing need in this area and is also of immense benefit to the local economy. He understands that DFI Rose has raised an issue with regards to the widening of the Ballinamullen Road, placing the responsibility on the developer to be done as part of this planning application. He believes this is unreasonable given the small number of houses to be developed as part of this application. He also wishes to point out that this developer has already widened 200 metres of the Ballinamullen Road in conjunction with a previous development and has agreed to another 150 metres to the Riverview Road junction as part of this proposed planning application. However, to insist the developer must widen the entire length of the Ballinamullen Road is totally unreasonable and financially unviable. Therefore, in light of the works Cherrybrook Developments have already done to the Ballinamullen Road, what they propose to do as part of this application, he requests that planning officers review their determination to refuse and bring this application forward as an approval, bearing in mind the benefits this proposal brings to the Omagh area. And we'll move on now to the presentation. So you can see outlined in red on this current slide, the application site accessed in its backland development. The front phase of this site, overall site, has been developed. Dwellings are up and I think all of them are occupied. The block plan showing the proposed layout, you can see the houses all detached, set on their own plots using the same access that serves phase 1. On this block plan also the proposed road widening and footpath provision is also annotated up to the junction on the left hand side to the junction with the Riverview Road. The proposed houses are shown here. This is house type B on sites 10 and 11. The floor plan to correspond. House type BM, sites 6, 7, 8 and 9, the corresponding floor plan. Photographs taken of the site. The image on the left shows the development site or shows the footpath existing along the frontage of the existing development. The centre photograph shows the development road migrating between the existing dwellings as part of phase 1. And the photograph on the right then shows the footpath across the site frontage as it heads towards Riverview Road, which in turn runs on down to the Killyclahar Road junction. This photograph is much the same, only zoomed in a little, showing the development road with the pedestrian crossing points across the development road. You can see them there in the cream colour. The right-hand image then shows the footpath across the frontage, the housing development and application site on your right-hand side, and the road then migrates on towards the Riverview Road junction. This is further along in that same direction, so we're leaving the application site behind us. It's on the right-hand side to the rear. The two blue stars are where the pedestrian crossing point is to be, so there's a footpath proposed along our right-hand side image where that electricity pole is. There's then to be a pedestrian crossing point at the two blue stars and a footpath progressing from there then on the left-hand side of the road up to the Riverview Road junction. This is the Riverview Road junction that's mentioned, and it will tie into the footpath then on the right-hand image, which migrates on past Riverview Road, serving the houses further on down the road. And there's a footpath then on the right-hand side. You can see fairly new houses built there as well. This shows the footpath provision. The left-hand image shows the footpath provision on the Riverview Road is behind us, and this is where the footpath provision ends at this part of the Ballinamullin Road. You can see the red and white checkered sign indicating basically that footpath connectivity and progression stops there. The right-hand image is taken with standing with me back to the Killyclogher Road. We're looking back up towards the site now. There's footpath provision here on the right-hand side. And you can see this is a clear image then looking down towards the Killyclogher Road junction. So we have footpath provision up past Retreat Heights and the houses on the left. Footpath provision both sides of the road. If we go back to the previous image, you can see then that footpath provision stops here and there's nothing further. So DFI Roads were consulted. They have responded in terms of the drawings and the roads consultant's supporting statement. They admit or they concede that the drawing has been amended to show a 3 metre wide footway cycles path. It's important, I suppose, at this stage to note that initially the applicant agent submitted a 2 metre wide footway, but did concede to enlarge that to the 3 metres. And provided it to the Riverview Road junction. A PCP cyclist crossing point will be required across on both sides of the Riverview Road junction, which is to be done, as I've stated and shown on the photographs. As previously advised, however, Road say that Council should note that the missing footway cyclist link on the Ballinamullin Road to the Killyclogher Road, and that's the photographs that I showed on the last slide, is not being offered by the developer at this stage. DFI Roads have concern that an approval for backland development without providing this link to the Killyclogher Road will leave a narrower stretch of road without a pedestrian cyclist facility for the increased usage on the desired line of the attractors in the Killyclogher Road direction. This will set a precedent for future backland development in this vicinity and put in question the possibility of this link being provided as developer-led mitigation as the lands are developed. Council should refer to previous consultation comments, and it's basically a reiteration of these comments. The requirement to provide this footway cyclist link will ultimately be a matter for Council to consider or determine as the decision maker in the planning process. As this is an outstanding issue, the Council determination in this matter is requested prior to any further consultation, and that's ultimately the main reason we're here today, is having made that determination. So policy DEO2, design quality. Council will support development proposals which demonstrate a high quality built environment in relation to architectural style, siting layout orientation and density, height, scale, form, mass and proportion, and which, and point E here is the important one, integrates sustainable modes of transport including walking, cycling, and to minimise the impact of car parking. HOU 5, shaping our houses and homes. The Council will support development proposals for residential development where it can be demonstrated that the proposals create a quality and sustainable residential environment which meets all of the following criteria. And it goes on then as continued. All buildings are located and oriented to the front onto existing proposed roads. They provide detailed plans of boundary treatment, and one of the concerns outlined on this application is the use of close board fencing, not being limited to the rear dwellings where there's no aspect onto the public road. We have further information received on that, and I'll come on to that in a bit. So the boundary treatment concerns that officers had when assessing this was the green lines you can see on the left-hand image are closed board timber fencing which migrates past the front of the houses on sites 8 and 9 and on site 7. Zoomed in image show the fence detail. But as I say, we have further information received from the agent in this regard. The application also has concerns about a lack of information in terms of watercourse development that's required in order to allow for outfalls from septic tanks or package treatment plants. The advice given from Shared Environmental Services that the watercourse adjoining the application site is hydrologically linked to the River Foyle and its tributaries via the Kimone River. The data suggests that Atlantic salmon spawning habitat is located in the Kimone, approximately 400 metres downstream. They require further information in this form of a construction method statement to inform the in-stream works required to construct the surface water and package treatment plant outfalls. It should identify risks to waterways from cement, concrete, grout, suspended solids, chemicals, paint and hydrocarbons, including fuels, oils, and detail all mitigation measures. This hasn't been received, and it would have required further consultation in order to ensure that the requirements of this were met, and that can be said with all certainty that there will be no significant detrimental impact. The revised boundary treatment that I alluded to earlier has been submitted in an effort to overcome refusal reason 2. This hasn't been formally submitted. It is submitted, I think, yesterday perhaps. No formal submission or publicity or neighbour notification carried out in respect of this. And as you can see, the Type A wall does border on 2 occasions. It borders up to 3 properties in Site 4, Site 3 and Site 2 of Phase 1. So there would be a requirement for this to have been notified and adequately made public to the neighbours. So for the reasons, and I suppose the important point to make here is that our concern, the officer's concern here with this proposal is this development is proposed on land that is zoned for housing. There's an understanding that footway delivery and connectivity will be provided to allow this land to be developed and to allow zoned land to remain as zoned land and meet the needs of the planned strategy. It was made quite clear on the first phase of this development that roads and planning in association with their consultee being road service or DFI roads, that this would be allowed without the further connectivity, but it was made quite clear on phase 2 that this footpath, this footway, this link, this connectivity would be required and would be needed. So for the reasons listed within the report and in line with the wording of the transitional arrangements in the 2015 LDP regulations, when reading both the plan strategy and the DDP together, the proposal is considered not to accord with the LDP for the reasons stated. There are no other material considerations to indicate that it should be approved contrary to the LDP. It is recommended that the application is refused for the following reasons. Number 1, the proposal is contrary to the FODC plan strategy, SP01, Policy DEO2, design quality, as the absence of adequate footpath provision to link with existing infrastructure along the Ballinamullin Road will not allow for the integration of sustainable modes of transport, namely walking, and will not, as a result, demonstrate a high-quality built environment. The second reason, the proposal is contrary to the FODC plan strategy, strategic policy SP01, and policy HOU5, shaping our houses and homes, criteria F, in that the proposal includes the use of closed board fencing with an aspect onto the proposed development road and will not, as a result, create a quality and sustainable residential environment. And number 3, the proposal is contrary to the FODC plan strategy, strategic policy SP01, policy NEO1, NEO2, and NEO3. As the absence of the required ecological information, it cannot be determined whether this proposal is likely to adversely affect or harm features of nature conservation, protected species and their habitats, as well as other habitat species or features of nature of natural heritage importance. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Seamus. We have speaking rights on this. We have Richard Agus and Carol Gooley. If you could come forward, please, to the speaking area. Now, you have 10 minutes in which to present to the committee, and you can share it whichever way you wish, and we will be timing you. I'll indicate when there's a minute left. Okay, so who's going first? Yourself. Go.
Afternoon, members. My name is Carol Gurley. I'm a planning agent on the application, and beside me here is Richard Agus, roads consultant on the application. Now, just to explain, I wasn't the agent that submitted the application. That was an architect, Joe Diamond, and then I've been brought on in more recent months to try and assist and present at committee. So, in terms of four refusal reasons, the primary reason for refusal obviously is this matter of this footway link, which we'll deal with in greater detail. But the other three refusal reasons can be easily resolved. With the matter of the boundary treatments, I wasn't aware that this was an issue. I'd been talking to Michelle McGuckin as last couple of weeks regarding the footway and getting this to committee and stuff, but I wasn't aware there was an issue. Otherwise, I would have done my best to make sure that amended plans had been put in to address that issue. So I got the architect to send in amended plans yesterday, replacing the closed border fencing with a wall. Fully aware, Seamus explained that now needs to be reconsulted and neighbour notified. So with it, also with regards to the Badger survey that the Natural Environment Division requested, the applicant has explained to me that he was somewhat reluctant, understandably, to go to the expense of the Badger survey until this issue, this primary issue with regards to the principle of the application and the footway link was resolved and settled. So he is happy, 100% happy to carry out the Badger survey if members agree to approve the application today. The Badger survey can be carried out this autumn, and the results of which submitted and Environment Agency reconsulted within the next month or two. Likewise, with regards to SCS's concerns with regards to the water course and pollution, etc., and a construction method statement, again, the applicant was somewhat reluctant to go to that expense until this issue of the footway was resolved. It's not unusual for an application to come in front of committee and for matters which are easily resolved to be dealt with at a later stage and an agreed time frame discussed at the committee. So moving forward then to the primary reason for refusal, which is refusal reason 1, and based on this issue of the footway link, I actually spoke with Andrew Alderdice from DFI Road several months back, and as expected, he confirmed that this was actually a historic demand from Roads relating specifically to Killyclogher. And in his words, his hands were tied. Andrew fully acknowledged that the request was extreme, especially for one applicant, and recognised the betterment to result with the alternative offer which the applicant has proposed, and that is rather than provide a footway link measuring almost 400 metres to connect with the main Killyclogher Road, what he has offered as an alternative is 150 metres to connect with an existing footway at the Riverview Road junction, as explained by Seamus. Andrew welcomed this option. He said it would definitely make a good start. It would bring about planning betterment, but due to the historic response from his predecessors, his response had to come back, still asking for the footway link to the Killyclogher Road. So that's just a wee by way of context. So moving forward, most members here are familiar with Killyclogher. It's a small rural village located on the outskirts of Omagh with a current population of just over 3,000. Whilst located within the settlement limits of Omagh town, Killyclogher's community take great pride in their own parochial identity, separate to the neighbouring parish, Omagh town. The community has its own local infrastructure with a vibrant GAA club, an Irish school, a church, a parish hierarchy, a youth club and a community hall. There is a massive demand for new houses within Killyclogher from locals who wish to remain in the parish which they were born and bred, and they want to support a thriving rural community. The applicant confirms that all 5 of the houses he built to the front of the site in phase 1 were sold before construction was even finished, and all 5 were bought by locals. So this in itself demonstrates the local demand for houses. Whilst we fully appreciate a footpath link is required, what we find issue with is the length at which DFI are insisting one applicant construct this footpath in Killyclogher alone. As an alternative, the applicant has submitted plans illustrating a footway solution to connect the application site with an existing footway at the River Road junction. This improvement will benefit both existing and proposed residents and is a reasonable offer at this juncture. I am now going to hand you over to Richard, who's going to explain a bit more about the matter of the footpath, and then I will finish up after Richard finishes.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee and planning officers. DFI Roads have set out their concerns, and that granting this housing will set a precedent and jeopardise the delivery of the footway link by other developers, leaving the houses remote from the footway network. I consider that it does set a precedent if it's refused, and no other application will come forward for housing on the lands at Ballynamullen Road, because no other applicant can deliver this footway in its entirety. So the current houses will all remain remote from the footway network, and no further improvements will come forward. A refusal also sets a precedent that will have implications for other applications coming forward in this largely rural council area, and that will stifle development elsewhere in the council. I made a submission in May and had noted an application for 58 houses on Scallon Road was approved in April. This was a narrow road and a discontinuous footway, but there was no suggestion that those 58 houses needed a wider road or a footway or a cycleway. Within your pack today is the list of the applications approved in June, and that includes 8 houses in Drumquin. It included frontage road widening and frontage footways, but there was no requirement for cycleways and no requirement for adjoining sections of roads to be widened and have linking footways. I don't have any issue with either of those approvals. They seem appropriate, they seem proportionate. My issue is that Cherrybrook Development's application is being treated so differently. As has been noted, the footway has been built out in sections, with each developer providing the footway along their frontage. So when fully developed, the footway and widened road will be complete. This applicant has already gone further than providing simply frontage footways, and is offering to provide 150 metres of further footway beyond the frontage, and that connects existing disjointed footways. If permitted, the applicant will have provided over 400 metres of footway along the Ballynamullen Road, but declining the application declines the opportunity for that linking for the 150 metres of footway to be provided, and retains the unconnected footway sections. Obviously, connecting the footways provides a huge benefit for the existing residents. There's 4 existing households get a footway that will pass them. 9 get a footway link which links them to the existing footway at Riverview Road, and plus the 7 families in the application site itself. Expecting developers to connect the footway to the existing footway is reasonable. Expecting them to solve the existing deficiency on the wider network seems unreasonable. You may be told that you'll be liable if there's a problem in the future, but if you turn this proposal down, you're refusing an improvement scheme, and therefore arguably complicit in retaining the existing poor situation. So the decision today comes down to, is the application approved, and in doing so, approve road safety for the existing road users as well as the 7 further developed dwellings? Or do you wish to refuse the houses and leave the current road users with the narrow roads and disconnected footways? Agreeing to this application is not delivering the perfection DFI Roads are now seeking, but it is closer to the perfection than the road is currently. And DFI Roads are certainly agreeable to you making this determination. They're definitely
1 minute remaining.
They're trying to do the right thing, and the connecting footway is right to strive for, and approving this application helps deliver that goal. Carol?
Right, quickly just say about how my role this afternoon is simply to remind members of the need to sustain their own rural communities in lines with the aims and objectives of the Council's own plan strategy and the 2030 community plan. Approval will allow the arrival of 7 new family homes. Young adults in the parish will be offered an opportunity to secure an affordable family home in their own community and in turn send their offspring to the Irish School and the Killyclogher GAA Club like their ancestors. The need for affordable housing in Killyclogher is a material consideration which outweighs an historic notion of an excessive connecting footpath totalling almost 1/3 of a mile. Thank you for listening, and we trust you will arrive at the correct decision for the benefit of Killyclogher Parish as a whole.
Thank you. Exactly 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Mr. McCann, Stephen.
Thank you, Gramila Chair, and thanks to Carol and Richard for your presentation. Richard, just in relation to the legislation, I suppose the legislation around the provision of footpaths, what does that state? Is it obligatory for developers to provide footpaths? I know that there's a recommendation, I suppose, but is there legal legislation in place which dictates what a developer must provide in terms of a development, in terms of footpaths?
Councillor, I'm not aware of the legal position, but the policy would talk about connectivity, and that's how this applicant is satisfying that policy, because they are connecting the site to the existing infrastructure. There isn't a policy which requires you to update the defective infrastructure hugely remote from your site, but it does seem very sensible to connect your site to the existing infrastructure, and that's what the applicant is offering to do.
Thank you. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. And just one last comment. I suppose it's more a comment than a question, but how do we quantify, that the developer has met his obligations? He's providing, am I correct in saying he's providing 150 metres of footway to connect to an existing footway?
We can clarify that with Seamus when we're finished this.
I suppose, is that not him meeting his obligations under the policy, I suppose, and how far does he have to go? I suppose that's what I'm trying to get to, Chair.
You'll have the opportunity to interrogate Seamus on that when we're finished with this part. Councillor McKeon, no bother. Councillor McGrath, go ahead, Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. It's just around maybe the first application of the 5 houses. Was there any plan for a footpath at that stage? And regarding road service, Richard, have they ever, was this normal procedure? I'd be aware of a road further down where the road service is making a new footpath on the Farmhill Road. I'm wondering why they're doing the Farmhill Road, but they won't do this road. I won't give a bit of help to, or even, funding for it,
Councillor, thank you. I wasn't involved in the previous application, but I have been made aware that roads had said you can have the first 5 houses with only providing the frontage footpath, but you need a linking footpath if you want to do the backlands. So that's where we're now in the position where we have linked to the existing footpath and on the associated road widening and so forth. I gather there has been this historic notion that for this particular piece of land, we have to put a footway along the remaining 300 metres of road that currently doesn't have the footway. But that would be that would certainly be an exception. I was trying to think, I can't think of another example, but I can think of another example. But it was to link into 1,200 houses in Ballymena where they did have to connect it down. But that was almost like a new settlement being put in, and they did extend it there. But as I said, it's not for this scale of development. I wouldn't have seen that before.
Yeah, I think that's our key point. That for 7 dwellings, this is an excessive request. And even Andrew Alderdice, when I discussed it with him on the phone, he explained, he says, Carol, this is excessive. He says, I haven't seen this with any other application. He says, but because it came out of road service, the old road service before DFI and before his time, he says, I have to stick to it. I have to come back with that response. He says, and that's why you'll see in his response, he's left it over to council to make a call on it. And he said to me, he says, we wouldn't be having any objections to it if council decide to agree to it.
Councillor O'Reilly, go ahead, Tom.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just clarify? The developer in question here, he doesn't own the land that extra, 250 meters would be constructed on, does he?
Sorry, it's owned by quite a few different landowners. The land required to construct the 150 metres to meet the River Review Road junction, he has agreed with the landowner of it that he will provide it, and the landowner will give him that land. But beyond that, it's tied up with quite a few different landowners.
Thanks.
Just is there a cost? Do we know how much this footpath is going to cost? Roughly,
I don't believe it is a matter of cost. I think it's a matter of availability of land, that it's land that is not within the control. So we have gone to the immediate neighbour and got the piece of land that connects us to the existing infrastructure, but we haven't. Be out of the question for 7 houses.
Thank you. Any further questions, members? Nobody indicating. So thank you very much, Richard. And oh, sorry, Councillor McCloughery coming in.
Sorry, Chair. I'm sort of Google Earthing this to have a look at the Ballinamullen Road. And one of the things we're asked by some of the letters that were submitted that we have to apply some form of fairness in this. And I'm wondering how much footpath have the other developers? Because I remember Ballinamullen Road whenever there was what probably would have been known as corporation, I think there was 3 corporation houses with an acre of land on it, and it seems fairly well developed now. So I'm looking at the last 20 years then, and I'm wondering how much footpath are you aware of how much footpath the other developers have supplied along this road compared to what the one you're representing has done?
I haven't got the whole road worked out. I had noted then that the main one was Riverview Heights, and they put in 150 metres to link their access to the Killyclocker Road. They didn't actually have the footway along the frontage, and that's where the large gap is. And then there's a short 75-metre gap, and then you're on to the frontage bit. So generally, each developer has done the bit at their own frontage as they built their houses. As has happened at our phase 1, we put the frontage bit on. If I was saying that was 100 metres, I would be making that up. It's the key difference with this application is that in addition to the frontage part, we're putting in we've gone and got third-party land and put in the extra 150 metres that links into the extra little portions that have been done all by the existing people. As I say, it's piecemeal, but as it has come along, it has then provided a footway where there previously wasn't one. And I guess the distinction I just make is the other applications that have been approved without this need. This applicant's going above and beyond what has been required of others, and it's ultimately helping achieve the fairly honourable goal that roads have of putting a footway along this road. That's a good intention, and we're contributing to it probably more than our fair share. But the applicant's content to do that.
Yeah, thank you. No further indications, so thanks, Richard and Carol, if you withdraw now to the public area.
Thank you.
And now we have representations from Councillor Barry McElduff. Councillor McElduff, you can come forward, please, Barry.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, Barry. And as you're aware, you have 5 minutes to make a presentation.
Okay.
Go ahead, Barry.
Thanks a million. I'm an Omagh councillor, and I'd be very familiar with this area. at the outset, I want to say that I want to support the application. And although it's within the settlement limit of Omagh, Carol did well to communicate the Killyclogher identity and sense of place. I was very pleased that MLAs Tom Buchanan and Daniel McCrossan also have added their voice of support, because they too know the area and will have spoken to local people about the importance of housing in Omagh and Killyclogher. Now, I can testify that there's a really strong requirement for housing in this area. No issue impacts on me more as a public representative week in, week out than housing related matters, except perhaps passport applications in the holiday season. But there's a real pressure on housing in that area. And this particular developer, I mean, I know developers who don't honour their commitments, and you live with the consequence of that. You try to get utilities and all sorted afterwards when things go wrong. But Cherrybrook Developments isn't like that. Very reputable, very professional, and has invested very heavily at this location. And reading the various reports, I was pleased to note that the layout and design is acceptable. So too are the access arrangements. And as Carol and Richard have noted, there's 3 areas of concern, and at least 2 of them can be overcome, easily overcome, and indeed efforts in recent days. And then we move on to the expectation on the developer, which I think everybody will acknowledge is excessive, and some flexibility has to be introduced here. And surely statutory bodies, including the council, should be enabling local development, as has been outlined in the plans. And there's an old phrase in planning, plan and gain. I think Richard used the term planning betterment. Knowing the location as I do, the erection of these 7 dwellings and that connectivity offer, that will definitely create a plan and gain in that area. And I just know from talking to the developers that they're very serious about quality and about their commitments to people who purchase homes from them, and have every confidence in them. And that's all I want to say. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks for that. You can now withdraw to the public area again. Thank you. Someone up. Seamus, if you want to say a few words.
Thanks, Chair. So just a few points to make on this. It's important, I suppose, to note that the provision of this footway, this connectivity, this footpath is a requirement as detailed within the Omagh Area Plan, and I think that perhaps Councillor McCann might go some way to answering the question that you'd asked. This was articulated at the stage the first phase was approved and consented, and it has never been a secret. I get Carol's point about speaking to the roads engineer, but at the end of the day, they have come back with a response here that requires provision of this footway, of this link. It's, I suppose, the onus falls to the applicant to see if that can be provided. I know of another case on the Riverview Road where the applicant has opted to show control of the necessary land. Now, I can't say, and I don't think can honestly say if he can achieve it, but he has shown that control in order to get an approval, and it'll be up to him then to negotiate with the intervening landowners to see if he can provide that. And that's for 2 units, but there is a consistency being shown here, and it's the policies within our plan strategy, but it is also goes back as far as, well, I shouldn't say as back as far as, because we're still using it as our plan policy, but the Omagh Area Plan, this has been known. I know that McBride, maybe shouldn't name applicants, but there is another application that surrounds this site, I think, for 62 houses. And it also has shown control of this land to provide display or provide the footpath down to the Killyclogher Road junction. So I get the frustration here, but at the same time, we are being consistent, and while the roads engineer may have indicated his own thoughts on it, the bottom line remains here that roads, DFA roads and planning are on the one page here, and this requirement is here, does exist, and has to be complied with if at all possible. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Seamus. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And members, I suppose just wanted to pick up on a few things as well. I think during the speaking rights, there was references to outstanding information, and it wouldn't be uncommon to address those post-committee. I think we in our council area expect to see all information front-loaded with applications. That's why we've introduced the validation checklist. Before that, we had the good practice guide for applicants and agents. All information that's required for an application, whether it's a construction method statement, whether it's other information, natural heritage information, other information, all that information should be submitted at the point as the application submitted to the council, not at a later date, and it shouldn't be held back to any later date. In terms of the footpath requirement, members, again, Seamus had said, this is a requirement that's born out of the plan. So it's said in the plan that we require a footpath link here. And whether it's that footpath link is within third-party lands, not material, the fact that that zoned land and that land was zoned on the basis that there needed to be a footpath link delivered would have potentially been one of the reasons why the land was actually zoned in the first place. When you zone pieces of land, members, you need the infrastructure in place, whether that's footpaths, whether it's cycleways, to enable the residents within that development. It was made clear in the first application, which was, I think, lesser units, that would be a private development. But as the backlands were developed, the link would be required. And suppose setting aside the plan, members, because it's third-party land, as I say, that's not a material consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Paul. Mr. McKeown.
Thank you, Chair. I think you said one time that there's no such thing as a stupid question, so I'm going to ask this question with the caveat that it might be stupid. But whenever you mention the plan, the OMA plan, Seamus, is that the old OMA area plan you're referring to? So I'm just wondering, how does that translate? Because we're now dealing with the LDP. So how does that translate from the old plan to what we're dealing with today? You know, I know that the LDP supersedes all the old plans, am I correct? So how does that requirement sit with what we're dealing with today in terms of the LDP, which is live from March, isn't it? From March last year.
Paul might be able to help me out with this one if need be, but the OMA area plan in terms of the zonings and the policy, the plans themselves is still in place until our policies plans adopted. So the zonings and the footpath and the requirements of that are still there. They're backed up by our policies within our plan strategy. So we're using both, and it's not using both in any sort of a clandestine way. It's how it's done until the policies plans adopted. That Paul might want to flesh that out.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Seamus. We're in a transitional period, members. So the local policies, the zonings, all those within the OMA area plan still stand, and then local requirements within those designations, which we would call quayside requirements now at this stage. Those are all in place and form part of the plan, although we have our own plan strategy then with our plan and policy statements in it. But until we have a local policies plan with our own zonings and designations, those within the OMA area plan and the Fermanagh area plan are still the plan.
Okay. And Chair, one quick follow-up, and apologies for being pedantic on this. I don't have an old OMA area plan in front of me to relate to, but in terms of this requirement for a footpath, is that site-specific to this particular application, to this particular location? And if it is, and I'm afraid for putting you under pressure or on the spot and not having the information, but what does the wording actually say? Is it a footpath must be provided, or is it the footpath must be provided by the developer? What does it actually say in the plan? Apologies if that's put someone under pressure. Apologies.
I think members, it'll relate to the zoning, the overall zoning, not so much any individual parcels of land.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm sort of kind of getting it difficult to balance this up. This particular development is for 7 extra houses, and then we hear that there's another development close by that's going to have 62 houses. And historically, Ballinamullin Road, from reports that I did for a previous organisation, would have been described as an undivided country road. So it wasn't wide enough to have a white line down the middle. So I can see why back in the day, whenever they were looking at this road, in order for that to be developed, the road would have had to been made wider, and there would have needed to have been a footpath, because it basically, if one car met another car, one of them was going to have to go into the hedge and the other one drive around it. And it's who's going to pay for that. And it's trying to get my head round, if this developer does it, and it shouldn't be our problem, but DFI don't seem to be balancing it out as to who and why and who gets the most benefit out of it. And that shouldn't be, they shouldn't be throwing it back to us as councillors to decide whether this gets planning permission because they want a footpath, or there should be a footpath provided, when, strictly speaking, that should be their remit, and they should have laid down some sort of ground rules with a fairness upon it. And it's come back to the old DOE, I mean, we're being asked to think and divide up something that isn't our responsibility, really. And I have serious issues with the way the old DOE and then DFI have sent this back to us to decide, because I can't balance myself out with the developer who's having to build 7 houses, has to do the maximum, and then there's somebody else coming along and they're going to build 62, but the footpath will already be there. Is that what we're being asked to do?
I think in terms of my reference to the other applications that are, one currently under consideration, another one approved, was to make it, I suppose, clear that we're not picking on someone here, we're not shoehorning somebody to do this for everyone else. And the other side of it is, this isn't a surprise. This has been known. This was made quite clear at the outset when Phase 1 was approved. It's, I suppose, clarification perhaps that it's DFI advise us, but at the end of the day, it's our policies, it's our plan, it's our policies plan that's coming forward. It's a requirement to provide this. Is there an onus on developers to look themselves at what's needed in any particular area that they're going to develop and see what's available, what needs to be made available, and what has to be done in terms of due diligence? But this has been known, and like I say, there's an application, it may be approved now for 2 houses, and they were asked to show control of the lands for the footpath as this application has been asked. Similarly, the 62 houses, so it's out there. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor McKeon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm verging on a proposal, and it's in relation, obviously we can't deal with point 2 and point 3, and I suppose this is maybe a comment to the agent, that if we had have had them documents in and approved, we could have been possibly, depending on the view of the committee, able to address this application in its entirety today, but we can't. So the ultimate would be a deferral. So I'm proposing that we would defer this application in relation to point 2 and point 3, subject to the satisfactory return of them consultations. In relation to the footpath, Chair, I'm satisfied that the agent does have an obligation the applicant does have an obligation to provide a footpath, and the ratio of footpath versus the development, 7 houses, he's providing 150 metres of footpath. You know, I think he's doing his bit. You know, I think he's meeting his obligations. And following on from Councillor McCarthy's comments, you know, at what stage does DFA step in and say, well, listen, we have a role to play here as well? In terms of the plan, my interpretation from what I heard is a footpath must be provided. It doesn't, you know, clearly state that it must be provided by the developer. It could be provided by others as well in terms of DFA I'm thinking about. In terms of the comments from Councillor Michael Duff and indeed others as well, there is a clear demand for housing in Omagh. And I think that the benefits of this application, this proposal, should be considered as well. And I'm considering them in terms of making that proposal, that we defer, that we recognise that the developer, maybe you can help me with wording of this to get across the line, Paul or Seamus, that we do recognise that the contribution the developer is making is suffice in terms of this, and we can seek a time for 2 and 3 to be addressed, if that makes sense to you.
Thanks for that, Stephen. We just move on.
Just a pity, just to say, Chair, maybe just to recap on that 2 and 3, if we had had them consultations in relation to the habitats and indeed the issue about the closed board fencing, we might have been able to address this in its entirety today, but we can't.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Councillor Thompson, Aaron.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's been a long debate and I suppose quite interesting in a way, but I find it strange that DFA, I find myself sympathy with all my colleagues here, and especially with Councillor McCloughlin, what his issue was. I find it strange that DFA, you know, something like this here, they don't present themselves. If they, you know, I would like them to come to the committee and whoever signed that off and explain it. Because if one person's saying a DFA one thing and another saying another, you know, it doesn't make sense. You come to the planning committee then, because it needs to be a uniform answer, really. So I'm happy enough to, you know, I'm getting the gist of what Councillor McCann has said there. I do know the area very well, and I've known it for years, but I'm happy enough with the gist of what Councillor McCann has said regarding the deferral. I'm happy enough to second that we deferred for those reasons at this time, Chair.
And Councillor O'Reilly.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose what I want to explore a little bit here, Chair, is where DFI comes into all of this, insofar as a legal responsibility to conduct people in a safe manner from their house to services anywhere else. Surely there is an overall responsibility on them over and above any developer, and we see that where we lobby DFI to provide footpaths and so forth in various places, and it's a responsibility they have to be able to facilitate that. So I'm just wondering, legally, where does that fall in there over and above where we have in a plan that, and as Stephen has said, that connection, which we all recognise is most appropriate and all the rest of it, but it is whose responsibility at any given time, and particularly where you have a developer that doesn't have control of the land that allows easy connection to wherever that 400 metres is taking you to. They have, in this instance, got control to bring them to 150 extra metres. Surely there is some merit to be taken into that with an onus on DFI to either do something with, if there is other applications in the system, to be able to monitor that, Chair, and say, this has been a piecemeal approach all the way along here, and we hear back from how far John can remember back into it, so that this was never going to be envisaged as a one-hit, deliver a full footpath and then develop all the back lands in it. It was going to be a piecemeal. So why would we be taking a different approach in this particular instance? So that's one thing. And Chair, really and truly, in an overall context, we need to get some proper clarification of DFI here, where their responsibility lies in the safety aspect from a legal standpoint of allowing people to safely access. They seem to be in a mode nowadays where it is the responsibility in totality of any developer to deliver the road widening, the footpaths, the lights, whatever else they can do. I'd like to find out a little bit more definitive where that line is with their own responsibilities to help develop in local rural areas where it is going to be harder to attract developers to come in and build homes. And we very much recognise that's the majority of this council area. And unless we have an ability to get new homes, we're going to be in the longer run in difficulties there. Chair, I just want to continue here a little bit, if you'll allow me. So that's one aspect that I want to formally propose that we write in a suitably worded way. I'm sure Paul and Philip there can put together a properly worded letter to try and explore with DFI, and if that needs to go to the minister to be able to do that, then that's where we need to go with that. Insofar as if there is a unknown, as it were, here, that this was to be provided, but there is certainly an ambiguity, let's say at best, as to whose responsibility it is to provide this footpath, insofar as the other three parts of this application is that I take it could be an exception to the rule where we're at a straightforward application, and I fully agree that we should have all things loaded up front and all reports here, because to come to a committee with only a half, or in this a quarter of the required information doesn't allow us, and we shouldn't be making decisions on this. But is there a purpose there that, well, Stephen has looked for the deferral, that the principle needs established, first of all, of this footpath one way or the other, and that the other three elements of that can be conditions. So I'm just wondering where we are in respect of that, but I'm not averse to the, but I'm just a little conscious that the deferral, when we're talking about the Badger survey and the whole thing, before we get that in, could be quite a lengthy deferral.
Tom, Paul, you wish to come in there?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Whenever, I suppose, Councillor Riley, whenever we zone a piece of land for development to come forward, whether that's housing, those key site requirements, those infrastructural requirements, where it's footpaths, where it's cycleways, where it's anything else, the expectation would be clearly that those would be private-led developments that would be brought forward by the developers who are developing the applications and benefiting from the housing that's going to be on the site. Now, what we haven't seen a lot of here, and potentially we will see it as we bring forward our own local policies plan, is those infrastructural requirements being delivered through a planning agreement by a number of developers with parcels of land coming together in one planning agreement to deliver the length of footpath, and that's possibly just given the outdated area plan where the ambiguity and sort of piecemeal development has happened. So I say my view would be it's definitely private led. It's not a responsibility of DFI Roads to provide it for these type of applications. That would be done by the applicant or as part of wider applicants through the zone land. Your other question then, Councillor, the last question there, what was that again?
Just that because we're having the principle here of this, then the other three, if we're talking about a deferral and we're talking about a Badger survey there, it could be quite some time, if it's autumn, before that it's a condition as opposed to.
I think members' views that I suppose that I'm getting is that they're content in principle with the footpath, that there's been sufficient provision through this application of footpath. And if that's members' views on that principal issue, then I think the appropriate option would be to delegate that back to the officers to sort out the other outstanding issues. And then we'll just issue that through the scheme of delegation. No need to come back before members and have the same issue debated again. You've already taken a view on that principal issue. We'll take it from there. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Paul. And Councillor McCloughlin, John?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me back in. I think we're coming to a stage where we may be able to make a decision, and but I agree with Thomas. Ultimately, DFI are responsible for the roads. I do contend that because the developers are going to take benefit from this, they should be providing it. But it's the piecemeal bit that Thomas has worded. What I find hard is the piecemeal bit and who does what and who benefits the most. It seems quite strange that they don't seem to be aware that there's another planning application in the system, and they couldn't be working with both developers to work out which is the best. I mean, whilst going to the Riverview Road is nice, the Riverview Road doesn't really go anywhere, whereas the Farmhill Road would be more of an arterial route leading straight across to Killyclougher, linking it up, whereas the other road goes to Dunmullen. So I can see the reasons why you would want that road, that bit done. But then why, if this developer goes that way, then who goes the other way is the big question, and why they aren't having an overarching look at it. But I would second Thomas's letter that we write that, number one, I would have liked somebody from roads, and we've brought this up many times, somebody from roads here that we could put these questions to them. And it's not that we're looking at them to do the road works, it's to see how we can fairly divide up who does which piecemeal bit of the road. And then again, seeing if they do have any methodology for, as you say, and with it to work with us, so as our plan in the future can be balanced out in a way that this can be a holistic view and everybody takes their part in it.
Thanks for that. Members, now we had a proposal of Councillor McCann and seconded by Councillor Thompson to defer, but we had some further clarification from yourself, Paul, there. If you could redefine that clarification maybe before we move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think if members have taken a view on the principal issue, which it seems they have, then I think they delegate it back to the officers for consideration of the outstanding information on the scheme of delegation. Thanks, Chair.
That acceptable to yourself, Councillor McCann and Councillor Thompson? Okay. Thank you, members, for your input there. So everyone agreed with that solution? Thank you, members. Moving on then to application number 6. That's over to yourself, Adele.
Now, members, application number 6, LA 10 2023-2211F. This is for the retention of a car valeting business with 2 number sheds and associated floodlights. The applicant is B. Coulter, and the location is 20 metres south of 1 to 10 Market Court, Moneygnoe or Chanterhill and Enniskillen. The recommendation of officers is to refuse permission. So just here, members, the site identified in red. So a large rectangular site there in between Market Court, Ashdale and College Park Lane. And on the right-hand side of the red line, you'll see the outline of the 2 sheds that are on site. So an aerial image here of the site, and our site in question is identified with the yellow star. And again, the 2 temporary buildings there are visible on the eastern side of the site. So these are just some images of the site from the Ashdale side. So looking in, bounded by housing to the north, east and south, and then the roadside boundary bounded with the footpath and a concrete post wire fence. And then just another view at the front of the site with so relatively flat site surrounded by housing and one of the sheds there visible. Just again along the frontage. So this is an image now showing the current buildings on site that are subject to the retention of this application and a number of cars outside parked for valeting purposes. So this is the site layout plan. As you see, the double gates there on the top left-hand corner of the site. There is a concrete apron there for washings of cars runoff, and then over on the eastern right-hand side there of the site, we have the 2 sheds and a small plant room. These are all subject to the application to be retained. So a couple of images with the floor plan of the shed. So just a basic shed, no internal subdivisions, just pedestrian door and a roller door on each on the front. Now, this map is an extract from the Fermanagh area plan. So this is the Enniskillen town map. And the yellow star there, you show that this site is located within H22, which is zoned for housing. And then within the plan strategy, we have policy HO2 for the protection of land zoned for housing. So development of non-residential uses on land zoned for housing would only be permitted where it meets an identified demonstrable community need and no other sites are available in the settlement, or it forms part of a major housing development and remains ancillary and integral to it. So members, for the reasons listed within the report and in line with the wording of the transitional arrangements in the 2015 LDP regulations, when reading both the DDP and plan strategy together, the proposal does not accord with the LDP for the reasons stated, and there are no other material considerations to indicate it should be approved contrary to the LDP. It is recommended that the application is refused for the following reasons. So the proposal is contrary to the Strategic Policy SPO1, Furthering Sustainable Development, and Policy HOU2, Protection of Land Zoned for Housing, as it does not meet a demonstrable community need or is ancillary to a major scheme. The proposal is contrary to Strategic Policy SPO1 and Policy IBO1, as it is not on land zoned for such purposes in the local development plan or with an existing industrial area where it is compatible with adjacent and nearby uses. And the proposal is contrary to Strategic Policy SPO1 and Policy DEO2 design quality, as the proposed yard area and buildings do not demonstrate a high quality built environment in relation to the architectural style, use of materials and detailed design features, the layout and density and the scale and proportion of the character of the adjacent residential areas, and as a result would not create or enhance a sense of local identity or distinctiveness. So that's the presentation, Councillor.
Thank you, Adele. I'm aware that we have had a written submission from Ken Moore. If you could
So I'm going to read that.
before
Yeah.
any discussion. Thank you.
So this is from the agent, Ken Moore, who's not able to attend today. Good afternoon, members. I apologise that I am unable to attend this afternoon's meeting. I submit the following written submission for your consideration. Our client, Brian Coulter, purchased the site at considerable cost in November 2022. Fully aware of the site's commercial history, our client genuinely assumed that the erection of 2 small sheds for car valeting was acceptable, especially when the primary uses of this site spanning almost 50 years related to car sales. While on the short term, this valeting business would raise some revenue against cost incurred, the client's long-term objective is to develop the site for residential purposes. Following its last use of car sales, the site was left in a very unsightly state with rubble and other inert materials strewn throughout. Since purchasing, the client has tidied up the site, improving its appearance by way of resurfacing and securing it with high-quality compound fencing, facilitating not just the car valeting business, but also leaving it safe in the interests of the local neighbourhood, duly respecting its residential context and the wider public interest. Significant betterment in the overall appearance of the site has already been achieved. The 2 sheds are used solely for car valeting purposes. The car valeting business employs 1 full-time person. Cars are brought to the site for valeting and on completion are collected again by their owners, usually over a 1 or 2 day period. The site is not used for any other purpose or for the long-term parking of vehicles. The site has an extensive and long-established commercial planning history going back as far as 1975, when planning permission was granted for a livestock sales yard and auction room. Permission was granted for a car showroom in 1989, followed with an extension of this showroom to provide a car valeting area. Other intervening commercial approvals were granted, with residential development first being approved in 1997. The site is included within the larger 2.5 2.5 hectare zoned land housing land H22B within the FAP. Most of this zoning has already been developed, with the existing Ashdale housing development to the south, along with the adjoining Oakfield Court development to the east. The subject application site takes up the remaining small portion of 0.26 hectares of this 2.5 hectare zoning, accounting for 10% of the overall area. The site has a long established and historic commercial planning history going back almost 50 years. The current application for 2 number car valeting sheds is consistent and compatible with its historic commercial use, having operated without any known detriment to the surrounding residential amenity. Environmental Health Service, in their consultation response of 16th of October 23, are content and have no objections in principle to the proposed development, subject to conditions. The applicant is fully agreeable to comply with the conditions as stipulated. No detriment to residential amenity or change to the established residential character of the area will result from this car valeting business. These are small steel frame sheds designed to be fit for purpose and not inappropriate in context given the former use of this commercial site. It is, however, fully acknowledged that the Local Development Plan Policy HOU2 protection of land zoned for housing applies. It outlines that development of non-residential uses in zone land will only be permitted where certain criteria are met. This was made clear to our client when he first engaged with us to make this application. In this regard, and as previously outlined, the applicant's longer-term plan is to develop this site for housing. The applicant has already instructed us to prepare a planning application for housing development on the site, which will be submitted in the near future. Given due regard to policy HOU2, the applicant requests Council permit retention of the current proposal for a temporary period of up to 3 years. This will allow the Council to retain control of the future use of the site, enabling it to be developed in accordance with the prevailing policy. There is no policy restriction within the LDP policy stating that temporary permissions cannot be granted. Therefore, a time-limited approval is reasonable in this case. Granting of such a temporary permission will allow this micro-business with 1 full-time employee to continue to operate, keeping the site secure and free from potential neighbourhood nuisance. It will also allow the applicant time for the preparation, submission and approval of a high-quality planning application enabling the delivery of sustainable housing development, making use of the existing infrastructure on a site that will be immediately available in accordance with planning policy. In conclusion, this site, despite being located within a residential context, has the unique circumstance of a long-established commercial land use spanning almost 50 years. This is supported by the comprehensive planning history. While no buildings other than temporary buildings were erected, the historic commercial use of the site still remains. Therefore, no change to the character of the area will result. These are small steel frame sheds designed to be fit for purpose and are not inappropriate in context given the long-established commercial use of the site. The current proposal is not an alien land use but is consistent with the site's multiple historic commercial uses, having previously been granted permission for a car valeting area. Environmental Health Department, in their consultation response, are content with the proposal subject conditions, therefore no detrimental impact on the residential amenity of the immediate area. DFA Roads are also content. In acquiring this site, the applicant's genuine intention in the longer term is to develop this site for housing. To that end, and in full recognition of the current planning policy, the applicant will accept the grant of temporary planning permission of the current use for a period of up to 3 years. This will ensure that the Council can retain control of the development of the site in accordance with policy. It will also provide an appropriate timeline for the submission and approval of a high-quality plan application, allowing for the marketing and delivery of an equally high-quality sustainable housing development within the urban footprint in line with the prevailing planning policy. Furthermore, it will allow this micro-business to continue support employment for 1 full-time employee as policy encourages. I look forward to the favourable consideration of the Planning Committee today and taking into account the genuine case circumstances and the willingness of the client to cooperate and comply with planning policies. That's it, Chair.
Thank you, Adele. Councillor McCloughlin, go ahead, John.
Thank you. Adele, we've heard that the agent has put forward a temporary solution with a time-limited permission to carry out until. So if that was the case, would that be suitable for protection of land zoned for housing, as this is only planned to be a temporary action? And is it something within our remit?
I might let Paul jump in here to keep me right.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Chair. Look, members, I think ultimately it's a judgment for yourselves. I think in terms of planning policy, it's very clear that we protect the zone housing land. We've heard previous representations on this committee today about the sort of demonstrable housing need in the district. But if members are minded to approve it subject to a temporary time condition of 2 or 3 years, normally the temporary time conditions would be 2 years. It's not something officers would sort of promote, or that we would say would comply with the policy. But if it's members' judgment that that wouldn't be sufficient to protect the land as we go forward, then that's a matter for yourselves. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor McCann, go ahead, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. No, listen, without going into much scrutiny about it, I think that if it was planning compatible, I would be happy to propose the suggestion by the agent that we would grant a temporary planning approval to continue on the business that's there. Obviously, it'll be respecting the zoning for future development for housing, and indeed, Enniskillen is no different than Noma in terms of housing requirements and housing need. And I welcome the plans by the applicant to submit a plan application for housing in that area, which will be welcomed, I suppose, by everyone there. So in terms of there's a history there going by the agent's presentation. I have no reason to dispute that, so it would be in keeping with the use over the last half a decade or half a century or so. So if you can maybe put that into the form of words, maybe a temporary application or temporary approval to continue what is currently at. Thank you, Chair.
So that's Stephen and Councillor McCloughlin. John?
Yeah, I've often drove past that site. It's a shortcut to the Farmers Mart, and this old cars there for many years. So, and I remember them selling cars there, and it had been in a poor state for a while. So I think as a temporary measure, are we looking at 2 or 3 years, Stephen? 3? Would 3 years be a suitable time to get a suitable plan application in and be in a position to relocate? So I'm happy to second if that's deemed suitable.
I think we don't grant too many temporary permissions, members. From my experience, they've normally been for 2 years, and that allows you sufficient time to prepare an application. That doesn't prevent a further application coming in at a later stage to extend that period again if needed. Like so. Thanks, Chair.
So is the proposal then for a period of 2 years? You're happy enough, John? So we have a proposed and seconded, despite the refusal recommendation that we accept a 2-year temporary planning permission for this issue. All members agreed? You members? All the issues now. Moving on now to item 6, which is to note the schedule of planning decisions issued in June 24. Opposed to note. Councillor Thompson, seconded Councillor Robinson. Item 7, to note report on planning appeal decisions in June 2024. Just come in on that. Yes, somebody. Could a proposer seconder to note, please? Proposed Councillor McGrath, seconded Councillor Robinson. Thank you, members. Item 8 then, to note report on proposal of application notices, PANs, paper E. Again for noting, members. Proposed Councillor Robinson. Councillor Thompson, seconded. Thank you. Item 9, to note update report on planning enforcement, paper F. Should we stay explain? Again, could I have a proposer and second to note, please? Proposed Councillor Rainey, seconded Councillor McGrath. Thank you, members. Item 10 then, to receive an update on wastewater treatment works capacity and network capacity June 2024. And that's Paul to speak to that. Please, Paul.
Thank you, Chair and members. This is the yearly update report that we get from NI Water to inform the local development plan process in relation to wastewater treatment works capacity and also network capacity. So that came through there in June 2024. It's a fairly detailed report, members, so I'm not going to take you through all of it. I'm going to look at just the key parts. key elements of it. So you see, members, since April 2023, which was the last update, at that stage there were 16 settlements with no capacity across the districts, and that's actually quite a lot with no capacity. By June 24, there had been a reduction of 1. So now there's currently 15 settlements with no capacity. The status of Monet has changed as works has now been completed within that wastewater treatment works. So moving on in terms of network capacity and members, you'll see it's quite a significant issue. Really, very few settlements across the district have no issues with network capacity. Network capacity issues affecting Balleet, Ballinamallard, Carrickmore, Enniskillen, and Oma, Altamuscan, Derry, Gonley, Drumore, Irvistown, Lisbula, Fontana, Lisnaskey. So quite a few affected by the network issues with capacity. So those members, those are the key highlights of the report. There's a lot of detail within it, and we'll obviously give that consideration as we're taking forward our local development plan work. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Paul. Proposed Councillor Robinson, seconded Councillor Rainey. Okay, members, moving on then to item 11. Report on the, sorry, Stephen. Councillor McCann, go ahead.
I suppose it's just a comment briefly, Chair, that it is deeply concerning, this report, in terms of what we can do as a local authority in terms of providing houses in the term ahead. And, you know, for 15 settlements to have no capacity, that is deeply concerning for those who live in them areas who would like to maybe build or locate themselves in the area where they're from. So, and then further pressures on the network in other areas as well. So for this council area, there's serious concerns about our ALDP in general, I would say, Paul, would that be correct? You know, how we can produce the forecasted homes that we can develop. You know, how do we address that? I know we've had NI Water in before. I do think we should respond to this letter in some degree, maybe, Chair, to highlight our concerns and highlight the chains that they're putting on our development for the time ahead, something to that effect, you know.
Yeah, well, we did raise the issue directly with NI Water, but as a planning committee, maybe it's just more specific to raise this issue. So proposed Councillor McCann and Councillor O'Reilly.
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to second that. Can I just, inquire as to the validity of this sort of report in the face of an experience by our fellow councillor Seamus Green, in where there was no capacity indicated in Rosslea, and when he followed that up and actually delved into it a little bit more, it turned out, lo and behold, there was capacity. So, sometimes we're just bamboozled by input of information, and I appreciate we have to trust somebody somewhere along the line, but when it's blatantly then changed very quickly, it makes you doubt all of the information presented.
Chair, I was actually going to suggest, Councillor Riley, that we maybe pick up on that issue. I think it was actually Brookborough. I had some discussions with Councillor Green myself, and following a remodelling of the settlement, they identified further capacity. So I suppose it's, if members are minded, what we could write back and ask NI Water is the date of each settlement when they were last modelled, and to make sure that in line with our LDP, that the evidence that we're taking forward is the most up-to-date evidence that we have possible. So if members are reminded, we could ask for specifics on each of the models. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Paul. Happy enough with that proposal proposed by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor O'Reilly. We write to NI Water for further update on capacity. All agreed, members? Item 11 then, to note the report on planning committee actions from March 24 to May 24.
Yeah, just for noting, Chair, like all actions have been completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Proposed Councillor Thompson and Councillor O'Reilly.
Chair, happy to second that, and to make the comment, well done to all the planning officers there. all of the actions completed and nothing outstanding. It's certainly to be commended.
Here. Thanks for that, Tom. So we have it proposed and seconded. All agreed? Agreed. Thank you, members. So on to item 12 then is correspondence. 12.1, note correspondence from the Mid-Ulster District Council. Head Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, this is a consultation from Mid-Ulster District Council relating to a one-farm development that's been previously approved, and it was restricted to a 30-year time limit. And this application proposes to extend that to a 40-year time limit. Members, we had considered the application back in October 2020 at the R&C committee. There was no policy objections to the application at that stage, so I'd see no objections at this stage either. If members were content, we would submit another response. Thanks, Chair.
That need to be formally proposed. Could I have a proposer for that action? Proposed Councillor Rainey, seconded Councillor Robertson. Thank you. Next item, Paul, 12.2.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So 3 bits of correspondence here, members, from DFI. Coming out of the May Planning Committee meeting, we had read a few letters at the request of members. The first one was the LDP processes. I think we were concerned and had requested DFI look at options to compress the LDP timeframes so that we can secure timely completion of our own local policies plan. And obviously that's a recommendation that was coming out of the Public Accounts Committee as well. So members will see within the correspondence there that the DFI have basically referenced the Public Accounts Committee report as well, and also just referred to a number of actions that's coming through the Planning Improvement Programme, which looks to streamline the LDP processes. So hopefully those will result in some time savings as we progress the LPP, members. Moving on then, members, I think I'll just take 3 of these.
Just three together, yes, please.
Second letter then, members, is from Rosemary Daly, the Director, on the 2nd of July. And that relates to the requirement to notify the Department of certain applications prior to taking the decision. Members had obviously raised concerns about that in terms of the High Street application that we had. So we expressed our dissatisfaction at having to notify the department, and then the delay that occurred after the notification and getting the judgment back from the department. So, look, members, I suppose the key issue in this is that the DFI is reviewing the requirement to notify. They've instigated a pilot, as far as I understand, with Belfast City Council in terms of demolition and conservation areas. I think if that pilot's successful, they'll roll it out to all councils, and there'll also be a review of the LBC notification requirements as well. So we can update members on that further as progress, but hopefully that'll lead to less notifications and more timely decisions. Final piece of correspondence then, members, is from Donna Thompson, the Assistant Private Secretary to the Minister. It was 8th of July. This related to the recommendation coming out of the PAC report, members, for the consistent approach to rural housing. And we had expressed concern because under the Planning Improvement Programme, that was to be taken forward by councils as a business as usual action. But then it seemed through the SPPS climate change review that DFI was also taken forward. Some action on it. The letter just basically states that the call for evidence has happened. We have, as a council, have submitted a robust response to that and a detailed response on the issues. Those are currently being considered by the department. The department's input in terms of consistent decision making for rural housing relates to their own actions. But ultimately, the Minister's saying that he hasn't taken a decision on this at the minute. So would like to reassure our own members, Chair. So thank you.
Thank you. Proposer and seconder, I note those piece of communication. Councillor McGrath proposed. Seconded Councillor O'Reilly. Thank you. Moving on then to 12.3. note the publication of the public body's response to misrepresented soil samples by the Audit Office.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair and members. This is really just to make you aware that the report has been published. And the report has been completed by the Comptroller and Auditor General and the local government auditor of the Northern Ireland Audit Office. So publications there's a number of recommendations within it. We're currently considering those recommendations, various recommendations for DFI, DAERA and councils and collective recommendations as well, members. So we have, under confidential business, provided members with updates on our own enforcement investigation. And I think it'll be the intention, once we've considered the recommendations within this report, that we'll bring a further report back to the Planning Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. Proposed to note, Councillor Feely, and the seconder, Councillor Robinson. Thank you, members. Moving on to 12.4, others. We have another item from Urlacundy, Donegal County Council. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So members will be aware we've had the consultations on the Donegal County Council plan before the committee on a few occasions, and we have submitted a response to that consultation. And this is just notification now that it's been that's coming into effect. One caveat there, members, is that the minister has issued a notice to direct the council, and I think when you read that intention notice, it seems that the minister has some concerns with regards to the plan. So we can provide further updates in due course, members.
Thanks for that, Paul. Our problems are not unique, I see. Going ahead then, next item, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. And last piece, members, then, is a response from DFI, DFI Minister, on the 11th of July. This relates to the Section 26 determination for the Tarry Moyle 1 farm. And I know we had concerns with this, members, significant concerns that an application for 10 or 11 turbines, which would ordinarily be dealt with by us locally, has now been deemed regionally significant to be determined by the department. And essentially the minister saying that a decision was taken before he came into office, and he has no power to overturn that decision at this stage. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Paul. This proposer to note, Councillor Feely and Councillor O'Reilly wants to speak on that issue. Go ahead, Tom.
I know, Chair, I just can't help myself. You would nearly think from that correspondence, Chair, that it was done on an individual basis. The decision was made, so he can't change that now. You know, I'm taking that this is a policy that over a certain amount they are calling them all in and taking them all to their own sort of endeavours. Can we just be clear on that, or is it a policy that is there and that we can't affect, or is it? I just think it's wrong, Chair. I just think that we are being disfranchised in all sorts of ways, and this is another. And we should be at least putting up our tail feathers and objecting to it at any and every given. And I'm just wondering, does it give us any scope to go back and object?
Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, members, we are concerned about this, and there is a threshold within the regulations. Threshold, once you're over the threshold, you have to write the DFI for a determination. So it's I suppose it's within their gift then, when you're over that threshold, for them to deem it regionally significant. I think what's important here, members, is that there has been a consultation on the thresholds. We have responded robustly on that again to try and extend the thresholds to ensure that most applications are dealt with locally. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that consultation when those responses are considered. So at this point, I'm not sure if Philip has any further thoughts, but I think we just keep the situation monitored, and we'll see what comes out of the consultation on the thresholds. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Paul. Would you be minded to be happy enough to wait to the result of the consultation, Tom, and then we raise the issue at that stage? Okay, members. Propose to note correspondence, Councillor Robinson, second, and Councillor McCann. Got everything ready? Paul, is another issue of communication. I think many councillors on the committee have been receiving communication from a disgruntled constituent. So Paul wants to give some information on it.
Yeah, it's just members, some of you may have been copied on the correspondence, ongoing correspondence in relation to a site and enforcement activity that's ongoing. It's just to advise members that we've received the correspondence, it's been acknowledged and it's been dealt with through the proper procedures. So if any further updates are needed back to members, then we'll bring that forward. But at the minute, it's just been dealt with through normal procedures, just to let you know, members. Good, Chair.
Okay, members. Councillor O'Reilly. Refrain from naming the person, I think. Yeah. And just if you could refrain from naming the individual in question, Tom, or we'd have to go into confidential. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. Just that this does not reflect well on anybody to have this ongoing communication practically on a daily basis. You know, I suppose I would like more information at some point in the not too distant future as to this being sorted out. You know, this can't continue as an ongoing. Now, if we have got to a point in time where we have robustly dealt with all of the issues and said that all of this then falls within policy, then that's a completely different thing. But from the communication that's coming to us on a constant basis with photographs, some of them somewhat grainy and hard to work out in the dark, but there seems to be a genuine sort of thing. But I do note that it seems to be a sole contributor to this as opposed to more, but just that we could, as a planning committee, get this tied off, that we are and have dealt with all of the things, because it's the accusations are certainly going back years, not even recent.
Thanks for that, Tom. Just for information, I have made inquiries about the specific issues as well, and it's not a widely held opinion that we're receiving, but I just suggest there to Paul, we'll get a more comprehensive report to confidential for the September meeting. Okay, all agreed? Thank you. Proposed, Councillor Thompson, seconded Councillor Robbins. Thanks for that, members. That's finished. Thank you very much, members. That's us finished with the business today. Thank you and safe home.